Blood pooled beneath the gurney in Trauma Bay 3, but the woman they'd just fired stood frozen in the doorway, not with fear, but with the eerie stillness of someone who'd seen worse, much worse. Outside, the bass rumble of military vehicles shook the hospital windows, and when armed operators burst through the ER doors carrying a half-dead soldier, every doctor in Riverside General froze. Every doctor except the quiet night nurse they'd spent 6 months treating like she didn't belong. The one who'd just been escorted out. The one whose hands had stopped shaking the moment the chaos began. Her name was Kate Brennan, and the dying man on that stretcher was someone she'd already saved once, under conditions these civilians couldn't imagine. Before we go further, if you're here for the whole story, do me a favor, follow along to the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see just how far this story travels. Riverside General sat on the edge of Creston Falls like a forgotten monument, all cracked concrete and flickering fluorescence. The kind of place where ambition went to die and mediocrity thrived behind closed doors. Third-floor administration had marble floors. The ER had linoleum that peeled at the corners and a perpetual smell of antiseptic mixed with something sour nobody could quite identify. Kate Brennan had worked there for 6 months. 6 months of night shifts. 6 months of double-checking medication orders because day shift never bothered. 6 months of being invisible until someone needed blame. She was 32, pale in that way people get when they work too many overnights. With dark hair she kept tied back so tight it gave her headaches. Her scrubs were always clean. Her badge always clipped precisely to her collar. She moved through the ER like water, efficient, quiet, unremarkable. Except for her hands. They never shook. Not during codes, not during traumas, not when everyone else was screaming. "Brennan!" The voice cut through the noise of Monitor 4's alarm. Kate turned from the supply cabinet to find charge nurse Vicky Strauss glaring at her from across the nurses' station. Vicky was 48, thick-necked, and had run the night shift for 12 years with the warmth of a prison warden. "Yeah?" "You tagged another incident report." Kate closed the cabinet. "Patient in Bay 6 had restraints applied without physician order. Protocol says you're making my job harder." Vicky's voice dropped. "Third one this month. Third violation this month." Around them, the ER hummed with its usual controlled chaos. A drunk guy in Bay 2 was singing off-key. Someone's kid was crying. The espresso machine in the break room hissed like a dying snake. Nobody looked up. Nobody ever looked up when Vicky started. "You think you're special?" Vicky stepped closer. "You think documenting every little mistake makes you some kind of hero?" Kate's expression didn't change. "It makes me a nurse." "It makes you a pain in the ass." Dr. Marcus Halford pushed past them with a tablet in one hand and coffee in the other. He was the kind of ER doctor who'd stopped carrying around year 3 and now coasted on arrogance and barely competent reflexes. "Strauss, we need Bay 4 turned over. Got a chest pain coming in." Vicky didn't break eye contact with Kate. "Brennan will handle it." "Great. Whatever." Halford was already gone. Kate grabbed the cleaning supplies without a word. This was the dance. They gave her the worst assignments. The drunks who swung, the psych patients who spat, the beds nobody wanted to clean. She took them all with the same blank professionalism that drove Vicky insane, because showing emotion gave them ammunition. She'd learned that lesson a long time ago, in a place where showing fear got you killed. Bay 4 smelled like vomit and cigarettes. The previous patient had been a 40-something man with chest pain that turned out to be anxiety and a 2-pack-a-day habit. He'd left his hospital gown on the floor. Kate snapped on gloves and started stripping the bed. "Heard Vicky's got it out for you." She turned. Jimmy Coors stood in the doorway, the only ER tech who bothered learning her name. He was 26, built like he still played college football, with the kind of easy smile that didn't belong in a place like this. "Vicky's got it out for everyone," Kate said. "Yeah, but she especially hates you." Jimmy leaned against the doorframe. "Why's that?" "I follow the rules." "Nobody follows the rules." Kate sprayed down the mattress. "I do." Jimmy watched her work for a moment. "You know, you're weird, Brennan." "Thanks." "Not a bad weird, just different, like you're always waiting for something." Kate's hands paused for half a second. Then she went back to wiping down the rails. I'm waiting for this shift to end. Liar. The radio on Jimmy's hip crackled. Dispatch announced an incoming ambulance. Motor vehicle accident, moderate injuries, 7 minutes out. Jimmy pushed off the doorframe. Duty calls. Don't let Vicky grind you down. Wouldn't dream of it. He left. Kate finished cleaning in silence. The thing was, Jimmy wasn't wrong. She was waiting. She'd been waiting for 6 months, waiting for the other shoe to drop, waiting for someone to ask the right questions, waiting for the past to stop feeling like a weight she carried in her chest every time she heard sirens. But Creston Falls wasn't the kind of place where people asked questions. They just showed up, did the minimum, collected their checks, and pretended the rest didn't matter. That suited her fine. Mostly. The ambulance rolled in at 11:47 p.m. Kate was restocking Bay 8 when she heard the commotion, paramedics shouting, wheels squeaking, the pneumatic hiss of the ambulance bay doors. She stepped into the hallway just as they wheeled past. Female, mid-30s, car versus tree. Unconscious. Possible spinal injury. Dr. Halford jogged alongside the gurney, looking more awake than usual. Vicky barked orders. 2 more nurses appeared from nowhere. This was the rhythm of the ER, long stretches of tedium punctuated by moments of pure adrenaline. Kate started to turn back to Bay 8. Then she heard it. A sound that didn't belong. A wet, rattling breath. The kind that meant airway compromise. The kind that meant someone had seconds, not minutes. She was moving before she decided to move. Wait. Halford looked up, annoyed. What? Kate stepped to the gurney. The patient's color was wrong. Gray-blue. Her chest rose and fell in shallow, rapid movements. She's not moving air. We just intubated in the field. Check the tube. Halford's face darkened. Excuse me? Kate's eyes stayed on the patient. Right main stem. Check the tube. For a moment, nobody moved. You didn't question doctors, especially not as a night shift nurse who'd been there 6 months. Especially not when that doctor was Marcus Halford, who had an ego the size of the parking lot and a reputation for holding grudges. Vicky's voice cut through the tension. Brennan, step back. Kate didn't step back. She pointed at the monitor. Her O2 sats dropping. She's only ventilating 1 lung. Halford stared at her, then at the monitor, then at the patient. The oxygen saturation read 89%, then 87%. God damn it! Halford grabbed a laryngoscope. Hold her head. Kate's hands moved automatically, stabilizing the patient's cervical spine while Halford repositioned the endotracheal tube. 30 seconds later, the monitor climbed back to 95%. The patient's color improved. Crisis averted. Halford straightened, his face red. Next time, Brennan, you wait until you're asked. Then he walked away. The rest of the team followed, wheeling the patient toward Trauma Bay 1. Jimmy shot Kate a look that said nice catch as he passed. Vicky just glared. Kate returned to Bay 8. Her hands were steady. They were always steady. But inside, her pulse hammered, because she'd done it again. Stepped forward when she should have stayed back. Shown competence in a place that punished competence. Made herself visible. She spent the next hour trying to disappear again. It didn't work. At 1:15 a.m., Vicky found her in the med room. Director Pike wants to see you. Kate looked up from the inventory log. When? Now. Gordon Pike's office was on the 4th floor, in the administrative wing where the carpets were plush, and the air smelled like expensive coffee instead of bleach. Kate had been up here exactly once. During her initial hiring interview, Pike had barely looked at her then, just skimmed her resume and signed off on the hire. Now he sat behind his oversized desk like a king on a throne, 56 years old, silver-haired, with the kind of fake tan that came from a bottle and the kind of smile that never reached his eyes. Vicky stood beside him, arms crossed. Kate remained standing. Nobody offered her a chair. Nurse Brennan, Pike's voice was smooth, practiced. We need to discuss your behavior tonight. Kate said nothing. Dr. Halford filed a complaint, says you undermined his authority in front of the trauma team. I identified a critical patient safety issue. You overstepped. I prevented a complication. Pike leaned back in his chair. That's not your determination to make. You're a floor nurse. Dr. Halford is a board-certified emergency physician with 12 years of experience. Your job is to follow orders, not question them. Kate's jaw tightened. My job is patient care. Your job, Pike said slowly, is whatever I say it is. The room felt smaller suddenly. Vicky's expression was smug. Pike's smile was cold. This isn't the first time you've caused problems, Pike continued. 3 incident reports in 8 weeks, multiple complaints about your attitude, failure to integrate with the team. Those reports documented safety violations. Those reports made this hospital look bad. Kate felt something shift in her chest, a familiar anger, the kind she'd spent 6 months keeping buried. So patient safety matters less than reputation? Pike's smile vanished. Don't twist my words. Then don't twist the facts. Vicky took a step forward. You need to watch your tone. Kate turned to her. And you need to watch your restraint protocols, or is falsifying documentation standard practice here? Vicky's face went purple. Pike stood, his hands pressed flat on the desk. That's enough. Is it? Kate's voice stayed level, but something in it changed. A hardness. An edge. Because I've been watching this place for 6 months, and I've seen enough violations to fill a file cabinet. Medication errors swept under the rug. Staffing ratios ignored. Equipment maintenance deferred until something breaks. You run this ER like a business, not a hospital, and eventually someone's going to die because of it. The silence that followed was absolute. Then Pike smiled again. Slow, dangerous. Clear out your locker, he said. You're done. Kate didn't move. You're firing me for reporting safety concerns? I'm firing you for insubordination, effective immediately. Pike pressed a button on his desk phone. Security, please come to my office. Vicky looked like Christmas had come early. Kate stood there, her mind racing. 6 months. She'd kept her head down for 6 months, stayed quiet, stayed invisible. And it hadn't mattered, because places like this didn't want competence. They wanted compliance. 2 security guards appeared in the doorway. Both looked uncomfortable. Escort Nurse Brennan out of the building, Pike said. Make sure she turns in her badge. Kate looked at him, really looked at him. And in that moment, she saw exactly what he was. A small man in a big chair, terrified that someone might notice he had no idea what he was doing. You'll regret this, she said quietly. Pike laughed. Is that a threat? It's a prediction. She turned and walked out between the security guards, her back straight, her face blank. They didn't speak as they rode the elevator down. Didn't speak as she cleaned out her locker in the staff room. One of them, a younger guy named Torres, looked like he wanted to say something, but his partner shot him a warning glance. Kate packed her things in silence. A spare pair of shoes, a jacket, a worn paperback she'd been reading on breaks. Not much to show for 6 months. She handed over her badge at the security desk. Then she walked toward the exit. The ER was still humming behind her. Another ambulance had just arrived. She could hear Vicky shouting orders, Halford calling for labs, the familiar symphony of controlled chaos that had been her life for half a year. Kate pushed through the double doors and stepped into the night. The air was cold. November in Creston Falls felt like winter came early and stayed late. She'd parked in the back lot, under a broken streetlight. Her car was a 15-year-old Civic that burned oil and made a rattling sound she couldn't afford to fix. She was halfway across the parking lot when she heard it, a sound that made her stop walking, made her stop breathing. The low, unmistakable rumble of heavy vehicles moving fast. She turned. 3 black SUVs came around the corner, moving in formation, their headlights cutting through the darkness like searchlights. Behind them, a military transport truck. Behind that, 2 more SUVs. They weren't slowing down. Kate's heart rate spiked. Muscle memory flooded through her. Assess, analyze, act. She'd heard convoys like this before, in places where they meant either rescue or catastrophe, and sometimes both at once. The vehicles pulled up to the ER entrance in a choreographed rush. Doors flew open. Armed men in tactical gear poured out, moving with the precision of a unit that had done this 1,000 times. Kate started walking back toward the hospital. She shouldn't. She'd just been fired. She had no authority, no badge, no reason to get involved. But her feet moved anyway, because she recognized the posture of the operators, recognized the barely controlled urgency in their movements, recognized the way they were scanning rooftops and corners even as they moved a stretcher from the transport truck. She'd seen this before, lived this before. The ER doors burst open as the team rushed inside. Kate could hear shouting now. Military voices clear and clipped. Vicky's voice rising in confusion. Dr. Halford demanding to know what was happening. Kate reached the entrance just as a tall man in a colonel's uniform stepped out of the lead SUV. He was maybe 50, steel gray crew cut, with the kind of face that looked like it had been carved from granite and left out in the weather too long. His uniform was crisp despite the late hour. 3 rows of ribbons on his chest. A name tag that read Reynolds. He saw her standing there in civilian clothes, no badge, and his eyes narrowed. "This area's restricted," he said. Kate didn't move. "What happened?" "That's classified." "How bad?" Something flickered in his expression. "Bad enough." From inside, someone screamed for O-negative blood. A monitor alarm shrieked. Kate heard the crash cart rolling. Reynolds turned toward the sound, then back to her. "You work here?" Kate hesitated. "Not anymore." "Then you need to leave." But Kate was already looking past him, through the glass doors. She could see the stretcher now, see the blood, see the way the trauma team was moving, too slow, too hesitant, too civilian. See the patient. And everything inside her went cold and hot at the same time, because she knew that face. Older. Harder. Half covered in blood. But she knew it. Reynolds was saying something, but Kate couldn't hear him. Her vision had tunneled, her hands had curled into fists. The man on that stretcher was Lieutenant Marcus Wolfe. No, not lieutenant anymore. The rank insignia on his tactical vest read Major. He'd been a boot lieutenant when she'd known him. Young, cocky, terrified, but hiding it well. She'd pulled him out of a burning Humvee in a place whose name was still classified, held pressure on his femoral artery for 40 minutes while they waited for evac, told him stupid jokes to keep him conscious. He'd lived because she hadn't let him die, and now he was back, bleeding out in Riverside General's ER. Kate pushed past Reynolds. "Hey!" She didn't stop, couldn't stop. Her feet carried her through the doors, past the stunned security guards, straight toward Trauma Bay 1. The scene inside was worse than she'd thought. Wolfe was gray. His blood pressure was crashing. The monitor showed 70/40 and dropping. Dr. Halford was trying to place a central line with shaking hands. Vicky was barking contradictory orders. 2 of the military operators stood against the wall, their faces locked in professional masks that didn't hide the fear underneath. "Move!" Kate's voice cut through the chaos. Everyone turned. Vicky's eyes went wide. "What the hell are you doing here? Security?" "His pressure's bottoming out," Kate said, already moving to the gurney. "He's hemorrhaging internally." Halford looked up. His face flushed. "You don't work here anymore." "Then fire me twice." Kate's hands were already on Wolfe, assessing. His abdomen was rigid, distended, classical signs of intra-abdominal bleeding. "He needs surgery now, not in 5 minutes. Now. We're stabilizing him first." "He won't survive stabilization. He's bleeding faster than you can replace volume." Kate looked at the operators. "Where's his damage?" One of them, a staff sergeant with a neck like a tree trunk, answered automatically. "IED blast. Took shrapnel to the torso. Field medic packed the wounds, but he's bleeding somewhere you can't pack." Kate's hands moved across Wolfe's abdomen, feeling for the telltale signs. There. Left upper quadrant. Spleen, most likely. Possibly liver. She looked at Halford. "You need to call surgery and tell them he's coming up now, or you need to crack his chest here." Halford stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "Crack his chest? Are you insane?" "I'm practical." Kate's eyes met his. "You've got maybe 3 minutes before he arrests. Call surgery or grab a scalpel. Your choice." Vicky grabbed Kate's arm. "Get out before—" "Let her work." Everyone froze. Colonel Reynolds stood in the doorway. His face was unreadable, but his voice carried absolute authority. Vicky's hand dropped. "Sir, this woman doesn't have privileges here. She was just terminated." "I don't care." Reynolds' eyes were locked on Kate. "Who are you?" Kate didn't look away from Wolfe. "Someone who knows what I'm doing." Reynolds studied her for a long moment. Then he turned to Halford. "Do what she says. You can't just—" "That man is a decorated special operations officer, and he is not dying in your ER because you were too proud to take advice. Now call surgery, or I will have you arrested for obstruction." Halford's face went white. He grabbed the phone. Kate was already moving, her hands working with the kind of practiced precision that came from doing this in far worse conditions than a well-lit trauma bay. She adjusted IV rates, repositioned monitoring leads, called out orders that the nurses followed automatically, too shocked to question. Wolf's pressure started to climb. Just a little, just enough. The OR team arrived 4 minutes later, 2 surgeons, an anesthesiologist, and a surgical nurse, all looking irritated at being called in for an emergency case until they saw the patient's condition and the armed soldiers standing guard. They rushed Wolf to the elevator. Kate stepped back, her hands finally still. The trauma bay went quiet. Vicky looked like she'd swallowed something rotten. Halford was on the phone with someone, his voice low and angry. The operators were talking quietly to Reynolds, their eyes occasionally flicking to Kate. Reynolds walked over to her. Up close, he was even more intimidating. 6'3" at least. Built like he still hit the gym daily. Eyes that had seen things most people couldn't imagine. "You have a name?" he asked. Kate hesitated. "Brennan." "First name?" "Kate." Reynolds' expression didn't change, but something shifted in his eyes. Recognition, or maybe just calculation. "You military?" "Used to be." "What branch?" Kate's throat tightened. "Army. Medical. MOS." 68W, combat medic. Reynolds nodded slowly. "You served in theater?" "2 tours." "Where?" Kate met his eyes. "Wherever they sent me." The silence stretched. Behind them, the ER had returned to its normal chaos. But in this small bubble, in Trauma Bay 1 with its blood-stained floor and the smell of copper in the air, time seemed suspended. "How'd you know what to do?" Reynolds asked quietly. "I've done it before." "For Major Wolf specifically?" Kate's jaw tightened. "That's classified." Something that might have been a smile touched Reynolds' face. "Not anymore, it isn't." He pulled out a tablet, tapped a few commands, then turned the screen toward her. Kate saw her own face staring back. Younger, harder, in uniform. The caption below read Sergeant Kate Brennan, 68W, Combat Medic, Bronze Star with Valor, Purple Heart. Below that, another file opened. Mission reports, casualty lists, incident summaries, and photos. One showed a burning vehicle. Another showed a dust-covered patrol base. A third showed a young Lieutenant Marcus Wolf with his arm around a female medic, both of them mud-splattered and grinning like idiots. Kate's hands started to shake. Just a little. Reynolds closed the tablet. "You disappeared after discharge. Changed your name, moved around. Why?" Kate didn't answer. Kate didn't beat. "You know what I think?" Reynolds continued. "I think you tried to leave it behind. Thought you could be a regular nurse in a regular hospital and pretend like those 2 tours never happened. But that doesn't work, does it?" Kate's voice came out rough. "I didn't want to be found." "Too bad." Gordon Pike's voice echoed from the doorway. "Colonel, I'm going to have to ask you to remove your men from my hospital. This is a civilian facility, and you can't just—" Reynolds turned. The look on his face made Pike stop mid-sentence. "This facility is now under federal emergency authority," Reynolds said flatly. "You'll receive official documentation within the hour. Until then, your staff will provide full cooperation, or I will have them detained for obstruction. Are we clear?" Pike's mouth opened and closed. "You can't do that." "I already did." Reynolds turned back to Kate. "Major Wolf is going to survive because of you. Again. The Army doesn't forget its people, Sergeant Brennan, whether you forgot yourself or not." He walked away, leaving Kate standing in the blood-stained trauma bay. Vicky was staring at her like she'd never seen her before. Halford had gone pale. The other nurses whispered, and Kate felt the last 6 months crumbling away like a dam breaking, because the past hadn't stayed buried. It had just walked through the door in tactical gear and blown her carefully constructed cover into pieces. The overhead speakers crackled. "Code Blue, I see you. Code Blue, I see you." Somewhere, another patient was dying. The ER kept moving, but Kate stood frozen, her hands finally shaking, her carefully blank expression cracking, because she'd spent 6 months trying to be invisible, and in one night, she'd become the center of everything. The operating room doors slammed open 4 hours later. Kate had spent those hours in the surgical waiting area, surrounded by armed operators who treated her like one of their own and hospital staff who didn't know how to treat her at all. Reynolds had stayed. So at his command team. They'd turned a corner of the waiting room into an impromptu tactical operations center, laptops and tablets spread across every available surface. When the surgeon emerged, still in his scrubs, everyone stood. "He made it," the surgeon said. "Ruptured spleen, lacerated liver, 3 liters of blood loss. But he's stable." Reynolds nodded once. "Can we see him?" "Give him an hour, he's in recovery." The surgeon left. The operators relaxed fractionally. Reynolds looked at Kate. "You saved his life." Again. Kate shook her head. Don't." Reynolds' voice was sharp. "Don't minimize it. Don't pretend it wasn't you. That's a decorated officer up there. He has a wife, 2 kids. They have a future because you refused to walk away." Kate's throat closed. "And now," Reynolds continued, "we're going to have a conversation about why you've been hiding in this third-rate ER for 6 months." But before Kate could respond, Gordon Pike appeared at the end of the hallway. He wasn't alone. Behind him stood 2 men in suits. Federal agents, Kate realized. And behind them, 3 more hospital administrators, all looking grim. Pike's face was triumphant. "Colonel Reynolds," he called out, "I've been in contact with the State Medical Board and Hospital Legal Counsel. I'm afraid we have a serious problem." Reynolds' expression went flat. "Explain." "That woman," Pike pointed at Kate, "is not an employee of this hospital. She was terminated earlier tonight. She entered a sterile trauma bay without authorization, performed medical procedures without privileges, and endangered a patient's life with reckless interventions. That reckless intervention saved Major Wolf. That's your opinion? Mine is different." Pike smiled. "I'm pressing charges. Criminal trespass. Practicing medicine without a license. Assault. By the time I'm done, she'll never work in healthcare again." The hallway went dead silent. Kate felt the world tilt. 6 months of hiding. 6 months of trying to build something normal. And it was ending here, in a hospital corridor, with a petty administrator trying to destroy her because she'd made him look bad. Reynolds stepped forward, his face dark. "You want to play that game? It's not a game. It's the law." "Then let me tell you about another law." Reynolds pulled out his tablet. "Federal investigators arrived 20 minutes ago. They've been going through your hospital's records. Want to know what they found?" Pike's smile faltered. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Falsified staffing reports. Medication inventory discrepancies. Equipment maintenance logs that don't match actual maintenance. Incident reports that mysteriously disappeared." Reynolds scrolled through the tablet. "And that's just in the last 3 months. Should we keep going?" Pike's face went gray. "Those are internal matters. Not when they involve federal Medicare fraud, not when they involve patient safety violations that cross state lines." Reynolds looked at the agents. "Gentlemen," one of the suits stepped forward. "Gordon Pike, you're under investigation for healthcare fraud, falsification of federal documents, and criminal negligence. You'll need to come with us." Pike's legs buckled. "This is ridiculous. I run this hospital. You ran it into the ground," Reynolds said, "and you tried to bury the one person who was documenting your failures." He looked at Kate. "Every incident report you filed, every violation you documented, every complaint you made. Federal investigators have been tracking this hospital for months, and your reports gave them everything they needed." Kate's world spun. She hadn't known, hadn't realized her careful documentation had been going anywhere beyond Pike's desk. "You were bait," Reynolds continued, "and you didn't even know it. The Army flagged this facility 6 months ago after 3 veterans died here under suspicious circumstances. We needed someone on the inside, someone competent, someone who'd do the right thing even when it cost them." He paused. "Someone like Sergeant Kate Brennan, who has a service record that reads like a Medal of Honor citation and a conscience that won't let her walk away from people who need help." Kate couldn't breathe. "So here's what happens next," Reynolds said. "Mr. Pike goes downtown. This hospital gets new administration. And you—" He looked at Kate. "You stop hiding." The agents led Pike away. He was still protesting, still threatening lawsuits, still refusing to believe his world had just imploded. The other administrators scattered. The hallway emptied. Kate stood there, surrounded by soldiers who knew exactly who she was, in a hospital that had just discovered the same thing. Reynolds put a hand on her shoulder. "Major Wolf's awake," he said quietly. "He's asking for you." Kate's hands were shaking again. "I don't think—" "I'm not asking, Sergeant." She followed him to the ICU. Wolf looked like hell but alive, his eyes clear despite the pain meds. When he saw Kate walk in, his cracked lips curved into something like a smile. "Brennan," he rasped. "Knew it was you. Felt your hands. Nobody else patches holes like you." Kate stood at the foot of his bed, unable to speak. "Told them," Wolf continued. "Told everyone. Best combat medic I ever saw. Saved my ass in Kandahar. Saved it again tonight." His eyes closed briefly. "Don't know how you ended up here, but I'm glad you were." Reynolds looked at Kate. He's not the only one. And for the first time in 6 months, Kate Brennan felt something crack open inside her chest. Not breaking, rebuilding. The ICU smelled like disinfectant and quiet desperation. Kate stood at the foot of Wolf's bed, her fingers wrapped around the metal rail so tight her knuckles went white. Around them, machines beeped their steady rhythms. An IV drip marked time in methodical drops. Through the window, dawn was starting to break over Creston Falls, gray light bleeding into black. Wolf's eyes drifted closed again, the pain meds pulling him under. A nurse Kate didn't recognize checked his vitals and left without making eye contact. Reynolds gestured toward the hallway. Kate followed. The corridor outside the ICU was emptier now. Most of the operators had dispersed to secure positions around the hospital. Only 2 remained, standing guard like statues. Reynolds led Kate past them to a small conference room that hospital administration probably used for family meetings about end-of-life care. He closed the door. "Sit." Kate remained standing. Reynolds sighed and sat down himself, suddenly looking every one of his 50-something years. "You've got questions?" "Yeah. Ask." Kate's jaw worked. "How long have you known where I was?" "About 4 months. And you didn't say anything." "Didn't need to. You were doing exactly what we needed you to do." Reynolds leaned back in his chair. "The Army's been watching Riverside General since March. 3 vets died here within 6 weeks. All preventable deaths. All swept under administrative rugs. The VA started asking questions. Questions led to patterns. Patterns led to suspicions about fraud and negligence." Kate felt something cold settle in her stomach. "So you used me. We gave you a job. You chose to do it right." "I didn't know I was being watched." "That's why it worked." Reynolds pulled out his tablet again, tapped through several files. "Every incident report you filed went straight to our investigators. Every time you documented a violation, you built our case. Pike spent 6 months trying to shut you up, and every move he made just dug his hole deeper." Kate stared at him. "You put me in that ER knowing I'd find problems. We put you there hoping you'd be who we knew you were." Reynolds met her eyes. "Combat medics don't stop being combat medics just because they take off the uniform. You see something broken, you fix it. You see someone bleeding, you stop it. That's who you are, Brennan. That's who you've always been." "I left the Army to get away from this." "No. You left because you were tired of losing people you couldn't save." Reynolds' voice softened a fraction. "I read your file. All of it. Including the parts you probably wish didn't exist." Kate's throat tightened. "Kandahar. The ambush. 7 wounded. You held that position for 4 hours while they extracted casualties one by one. Took a round through the shoulder and kept working. Saved 6 lives that day. I lost one. PFC David Morrison, 19 years old, bled out from a femoral artery injury before you could get to him." Reynolds paused. "That's what you can't forget, isn't it? The one you lost, not the 6 you saved." Kate's hands curled into fists. "I don't want to talk about this." "Too bad. Because Major Wolf is alive right now because you couldn't walk away. Because 19-year-old David Morrison is still in your head every time you see someone bleeding. You think that's weakness?" Reynolds shook his head. "That's why you're good at this. That's why we needed you here." Outside, someone's code alarm went off. Distant voices shouted medical jargon. The hospital kept churning. Kate finally sat down. "What happens now?" "Now. We clean house." Reynolds set the tablet on the table between them. "Pike's going to federal court. Hospital administration gets restructured. Every department gets audited. And I don't work here anymore. That's about to change. Kate looked up sharply. Reynolds slid a folder across the table. Riverside General needs a new director of emergency services. Someone who actually gives a damn about patient care. Someone with combat trauma experience. Someone who can't be bullied by administrators or intimidated by doctors with egos. Kate opened the folder, saw her name at the top of an official offer letter, saw a salary that made her current nursing wage look like pocket change. I'm not qualified for this. You're overqualified. Reynolds tapped the folder. You ran a field hospital in Helmand Province with nothing but duct tape and determination. You coordinated mass casualty events under enemy fire. You trained medics who went on to save hundreds of lives. Don't tell me you can't manage a civilian ER. That was different, only because the bullets were real. Reynolds stood. I'm not ordering you to take it. I'm telling you it's yours if you want it. But Brennan, this hospital needs you, whether you're ready to admit it or not. He walked to the door, then paused. Wolf will be in recovery for a few days. He's going to want updates. And there are 16 other operators on his team who are going to want to meet the medic who saved their commander, twice. Then he was gone. Kate sat alone in the conference room, staring at the folder like it might explode. Director of Emergency Services. 6 hours ago, she'd been fired. Now she was being offered the keys to the kingdom. The thing was, she didn't want the kingdom. She wanted to disappear again. Find another hospital, another night shift, another place where nobody knew her name or cared about her history. But Reynolds was right about one thing. She couldn't walk away from people who needed help, even when it cost her everything. The ER was chaos when Kate walked back through. Apparently word had spread about the military operation, Pike's arrest, and the mysterious night nurse who'd saved a dying soldier. Staff members stared as she passed. A few whispered. One of the newer nurses, Sarah maybe, started to say something, then thought better of it. Kate found Jimmy in the supply room restocking IV kits. He looked up when she entered. Holy hell, Brennan. Yeah. You were Army? Yeah. Like actual combat Army? Not just stateside medical? Kate grabbed a box of gauze. Does it matter? Jimmy set down the IV kits. Vicky's losing her mind. Halford locked himself in his office. Half the staff thinks you're some kind of covert operative, and the other half thinks you're about to get us all fired. Pike got himself fired by messing with you, which means you had federal investigators in your back pocket this whole time, and none of us knew. Jimmy's expression was caught between admiration and disbelief. How do you just walk around being that level of badass without anyone noticing? Practice. That's not an answer. Kate met his eyes. You want the real answer? I got good at being invisible because staying visible got people killed. I learned to blend in, shut up, and do my job without making noise. And it worked for 6 months until tonight. Jimmy was quiet for a moment. What happens now? I don't know. But you're not leaving, right? They can't just fire you again after they offered me Pike's job. Jimmy's jaw dropped. What? Director of Emergency Services. Are you serious? Kate shrugged. That's what the folder says. Are you going to take it? Before Kate could answer, Vicky appeared in the doorway. Her face was a mask of barely controlled fury, but underneath it, Kate could see something else. Fear, maybe. Or the realization that the balance of power had shifted in ways she couldn't control. Brennan, my office, now. Kate followed her to the charge nurse's cramped office behind the nurse's station. Vicky closed the door and turned, her arms crossed. I don't know what you think just happened, Vicky started, but Pike's gone. The hospital's under federal scrutiny, and you spent 6 months covering up violations that are now evidence in a criminal case. Kate's voice was flat. That's what happened. Vicky's face flushed. I was following orders. That's not a defense. You self-righteous... Vicky caught herself. You think you're better than everyone else? You think your military service makes you special? No. I think doing the right thing makes me employed. Kate stepped closer. Every time you told me to ignore a problem, I documented it. Every time you buried an incident report, I filed another one. Every time you protected Pike, you dug your own hole. I could lose my license. You should lose your license. Vicky's hands were shaking now. What do you want? You want me to apologize? You want me to grovel? I want you to do your job. Kate's voice softened slightly. You've been a nurse for 20 years, Vicky. You used to give a damn. I read your old evaluations. You were good once. What happened? Vicky looked away. I got tired. So you became part of the problem. It was easier. It was wrong. The silence stretched. Through the office window, the ER hummed. A kid with a broken arm. An elderly woman with chest pain. The ordinary tragedies of a Friday night bleeding into Saturday morning. Vicky finally looked back at Kate. They're going to fire me, aren't they? Probably. Good. The word came out bitter. Maybe I deserve it. Kate turned to leave, then stopped. For what it's worth. If you'd stood up to Pike even once, you might have changed things, but you didn't, and that's on you. She walked out. The rest of the shift passed in a strange fog. Kate worked mechanically, checking vitals, updating charts, restocking supplies. People gave her space. Even Dr. Halford, who finally emerged from his office around 7 a.m., took one look at her and found somewhere else to be. The sun was fully up by the time Kate's shift technically ended. She changed out of her scrubs in the locker room, the same locker she'd cleaned out 8 hours ago. Someone had put her badge back. She stared at it for a long moment, then clipped it to her jacket. Colonel Reynolds found her in the parking lot. Thought you might have left, he said. Thought about it. But you didn't. Kate leaned against her Civic. I need to know something. Ask. David Morrison, the kid I couldn't save in Kandahar. Did his family ever... She stopped. Did they ever blame me? Reynolds was quiet for a beat. They sent you a letter. It's in your file. I never saw it. You were in the field hospital when it arrived, unconscious, recovering from your shoulder surgery. By the time you woke up, the psych eval had you flagged for trauma response, and they decided not to pass it along. Thought it might make things worse. Kate's chest tightened. What did it say? That they knew you did everything you could. That Morrison talked about you in his last letter home. Told his mom about the medic who made everyone laugh during the worst moments. Who shared her protein bars. Who treated every wounded soldier like they were the only one who mattered. Reynolds pulled an envelope from his jacket. This is a copy. Official file's still sealed, but I pulled some strings. Kate took the envelope with shaking hands. You carried his death for 6 years, Reynolds continued. Maybe it's time to carry something else. He walked away. Kate sat in her car and opened the envelope. The letter was 2 pages, handwritten, dated 3 weeks after Morrison died. Dear Sergeant Brennan, we don't know if this letter will reach you. The Army says you're deployed, and they can't give us details. But we wanted you to know that David's last words were about you. Kate's vision blurred. She kept reading. He said you held his hand. Said you told him he was going to be okay, even when you both knew he wasn't. Said you made him feel brave. We know you did everything you could. We know you probably blame yourself. Please don't. David chose to serve. He believed in what he was doing, and he died knowing someone cared enough to stay with him until the end. Thank you for that. Thank you for being there when we couldn't be. Thank you for making his last moments less frightening. We'll be grateful to you for the rest of our lives. The letter ended with 2 signatures. Mr. and Mrs. Morrison. Kate sat in her car and cried for the first time in 6 years. The Creston Falls 5, a clinic, was a low brick building on the east side of town, wedged between a strip mall and a mechanic's garage. Kate walked through the doors at 10 a.m., the Morrison letter still folded in her pocket. The receptionist looked up. Can I help you? I need to see a counselor. Do you have an appointment? No. The receptionist started to say something about wait times and scheduling, then actually looked at Kate's face and stopped. Let me see what I can do. 20 minutes later, Kate sat across from a woman named Dr. Patricia Raines, who was maybe 60, with gray hair and the kind of calm presence that probably came from hearing every war story imaginable. You're military? Raines asked. Was. Recent discharge? 6 years ago. Raines made a note. What brings you in today? Kate pulled out the letter, set it on the desk between them. I've been carrying around a dead soldier for 6 years. Thought maybe it was time to put him down. Raines read the letter. Then she looked at Kate. Tell me about David Morrison. So Kate did. She talked for an hour. About Kandahar. About the ambush. About Morrison's face when he realized he wasn't going to make it. About the other 6 soldiers she'd saved that day, and how none of them seemed to matter compared to the one she'd lost. "Do you know what survivor's guilt looks like?" Rains asked when Kate finally stopped. "Yeah." "Do you know you're a textbook case?" Kate almost smiled. "Yeah. And you've spent 6 years trying to save enough people to make up for the one you couldn't save, which is why you became a nurse, why you worked night shifts in a dying hospital, why you documented every violation and fought every corrupt administrator." Rains leaned forward. "Kate, you can't save your way out of trauma. It doesn't work like that." "Then what does work?" "Accepting that you're human, that you did your best, that some people die despite everything you do, and it's not your fault." Rains paused. "And forgiving yourself for still being alive when they're not." Kate's throat closed. "The Army trained you to be a medic," Rains continued. "They trained you to save lives under impossible conditions. But they didn't train you to process what happens when you can't save everyone. That's the part you have to figure out yourself." "How?" "One day at a time, one patient at a time, one moment where you choose to believe you're enough." Rains tapped the letter. "Morrison's parents already forgave you. Maybe it's time you return the favor." Kate left the VA clinic feeling like someone had performed surgery on her chest, raw and exposed, but somehow lighter. Her phone buzzed. A text from Reynolds. "Wolf's awake and coherent, asking for you again." Kate drove back to Riverside General. The ICU was quieter now. Visiting hours had started, and a few families clustered around beds, speaking in hushed tones. Kate found Wolf in the same room, sitting slightly upright now, color returning to his face. "Brennan." His voice was stronger. "Heard you made director." "Haven't accepted yet." "Why the hell not?" Kate pulled a chair close. "Because I'm not sure I'm the right person. You saved my life. Twice. You documented violations no one else would touch. You stood up to a corrupt administrator who was literally having you fired." Wolf's eyes were sharp despite the pain meds. "If you're not the right person, nobody is." "I'm a medic, not an administrator." "You're a leader. There's a difference." Wolf shifted, winced. "You know what I remember most about Kandahar? Not the explosion, not the pain. I remember you kneeling beside me in that Humvee, blood everywhere, telling me stupid jokes while you kept me from bleeding out. You made me laugh while I was dying. That's leadership." Kate looked down. "I didn't save everyone. Nobody does. Morrison would tell you to stop carrying him around like a backpack." Wolf's voice was gentle. "I knew Morrison. Kid was tough. He wouldn't want you destroying yourself over something you couldn't control." Kate felt the Morrison letter burning in her pocket. "You left the Army because you were tired of losing people," Wolf continued. "But working in a hospital. You're going to lose people here too. Patients die. That's part of the job. The question is whether you're going to let those deaths stop you from saving everyone else." "That's easy for you to say." "No, it's not. It's the hardest thing in the world." Wolf met her eyes. "But you're already doing it. You've been doing it for 6 years. Time to stop pretending you're just a floor nurse hiding in the shadows." A nurse appeared in the doorway, not one Kate recognized. "Sorry, visiting time's almost up." Kate stood. Wolf caught her hand. "Take the job, Brennan. This place needs you. And maybe you need it too." Kate walked through the hospital in a daze. Past the ER, past the nurses' station, past the trauma bay where she'd saved Wolf's life 8 hours ago. Blood had been cleaned up, equipment restocked. The next crisis waited in the wings. She found herself in Pike's old office on the 4th floor. Someone had already started packing his belongings. Boxes of personal effects, framed diplomas, a fake plant that had probably been fake for years. The desk was empty. The chair was empty. Kate sat down. The view from here was different. She could see the whole ER from this window, could see ambulances arriving, could see staff moving through their routines. From up here, the chaos looked almost orderly. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Reynolds. "Federal team wants a statement. Tomorrow at 9 a.m. Bring coffee. It's going to be long." Then another message. Also, "Wolf's team is throwing a welcome back party when he's discharged. You're invited, not optional." Kate almost smiled. She pulled out the offer letter. "Read it again. Director of Emergency Services. Salary. Benefits. Responsibilities that would have terrified her 6 months ago. Now? Now they just felt like the next mission. She pulled out her phone and typed a response to Reynolds. "I'll take the job, but I have conditions." His reply came fast. "Name them." Kate's fingers moved over the screen. Full authority over hiring and firing. No administrative interference in medical decisions. Direct line to federal oversight during the transition. And Vicky Strauss gets a chance to prove she's not as bad as she's been acting. The response took longer this time. "Done. Except the Strauss part. That's your call. She's on probation pending review." Kate stared at her phone. Then at the empty office. Then at the ER through the window. She typed one more message. "When do I start?" "Monday. 6 a.m. "Welcome aboard, Director Brennan." Kate set the phone down. Took a breath. And for the first time in 6 years didn't feel like she was hiding. The weekend passed in a blur of federal interviews, paperwork, and exhaustion. Kate gave her statement Saturday morning. 3 hours of recounting every incident report, every violation, every interaction with Pike that had led to this moment. The investigators were thorough, clinical. They recorded everything. By Sunday afternoon, the full scope of Pike's corruption was spreading through Creston Falls like wildfire. Local news picked up the story. Federal fraud charges. Patient deaths. A nurse-turned-director who'd brought down an entire administration. Kate stayed home. Ignored her phone. Tried to process the fact that her life had imploded and rebuilt itself in 48 hours. Monday morning arrived too fast. Kate walked into Riverside General at 5:45 a.m., 15 minutes early, wearing clean scrubs and her old army boots. The security guard at the entrance, Torres, the younger one who'd escorted her out Friday night, straightened when he saw her. "Morning, ma'am." "Ma'am." "Not Brennan. Not you." Kate nodded and kept walking. The ER was starting to stir. Night shift handing off to day shift, coffee brewing, monitors beeping, the eternal rhythm of a hospital waking up. She found Jimmy at the nurse's station. "You actually came back," he said. "Said I would." "Yeah, but people say a lot of things." Jimmy grinned. "Director Brennan has a nice ring to it." "Don't start." "Too late. Everyone's already talking about it. You're like hospital legend now." Kate grabbed a tablet. "Where's Halford?" Jimmy's smile faded. "Called in sick, 3rd day in a row." "He's not sick." "No, he's avoiding you." Kate made a note. "Anyone else avoiding me?" "Half the day shift. Couple of the residents." Vicky showed up this morning, looked around like she expected federal agents to arrest her, then locked herself in the supply room. "Tell her to come see me when she's done hiding." Jimmy raised an eyebrows. "You're going to talk to her." "I'm going to give her a choice." Kate spent the first hour of her new job doing the most basic thing possible, walking through the ER and actually looking at it. Not as a floor nurse, as someone responsible for every decision, every patient, every outcome. The place was worse than she'd thought. Equipment was outdated, supplies were poorly organized, staffing ratios were criminal. The break room looked like a disaster zone. Half the computers didn't work. The crash cart in Bay 7 had expired medications. Kate made lists. Lots of lists. At 7:30, Vicky finally emerged from the supply room. Kate found her in the hallway. "My office. Now." They climbed to the 4th floor in silence. Kate's new office, Pike's old office, had been cleaned out over the weekend. New desk, new chair, new everything except the view. Kate sat down. Vicky remained standing. "You're expecting me to fire you," Kate said. "Yeah." "Why?" Vicky looked confused. Because I covered for Pike. Because I made your life hell. Because I deserve it." "Maybe." Kate leaned back. "Or maybe you spent 20 years being a good nurse until you got tired and forgot why you started. Maybe you took the easy path because the hard one was exhausting. Maybe you're not a bad person, just a worn-out one who made bad choices." Vicky's eyes filled. "I don't understand." "I'm giving you a choice. You can resign right now, walk away, and I'll make sure your exit is quiet. No charges, no investigations, just done. Or you stay. You work under my supervision. You follow every protocol. You document everything. You help me rebuild this ER into something that doesn't kill patients." Kate's voice hardened. "But if you screw up even once, If you cut even one corner, if you show even a hint of the person you've been for the last 6 months, you're gone. No second chances. Vicky was crying now. Why would you do this? Because someone once gave me a second chance when I didn't deserve it. Kate stood. I'm not doing this for you. I'm doing it because this ER needs experienced nurses and you used to be a damn good one. So the question is, are you still in there somewhere? Vicky wiped her eyes. I don't know. Figure it out. You have until end of shift to decide. Kate spent the rest of the morning in meetings. Hospital administration, legal counsel, HR. Federal liaisons who explained oversight protocols and compliance requirements in excruciating detail. By noon, her head was pounding. She was reviewing staffing schedules when someone knocked on her open door. Dr. Marcus Halford stood there, looking like he hadn't slept in 3 days. Can we talk? He asked. Kate gestured to the chair. Halford sat. I owe you an apology, he started. You owe me several. Yeah. Halford rubbed his face. I've been a doctor for 14 years. Somewhere along the way, I stopped listening to anyone who wasn't another doctor. Got arrogant, got complacent, started thinking my MD made me automatically right. Kate said nothing. Friday night, you were right about that patient, right about Wolf, right about everything, and instead of listening, I filed a complaint and tried to get you fired. Halford met her eyes. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I'm asking for a chance to do better. Why should I believe you? Because I'm terrified. The admission came out raw. I'm terrified that the next patient I blow off will die because I was too proud to listen. I'm terrified that I've become exactly the kind of doctor I swore I'd never be. And I'm terrified that if I don't change, I'll destroy someone's life. Kate studied him. You know what the difference is between a good doctor and a bad one? What? Good doctors know they don't know everything. Bad doctors pretend they do. Kate leaned forward. You've been pretending for a long time, Halford. Time to stop. So you're not firing me. I'm putting you on probation. You'll work every shift with a supervising physician for the next 60 days. You'll document every decision. You'll listen to your nurses. And if your ego shows up even once, you're done. Halford nodded slowly. Fair enough. And Halford, the next time a nurse tells you something's wrong, you listen. Yes, ma'am. After he left, Kate sat alone in her office and realized something. She'd spent 6 years running from leadership. Now she was sitting in the middle of it, and it felt right. The afternoon brought more crises. A budget meeting where she learned the ER was hemorrhaging money. A call from the state medical board asking for documentation. 3 staff members who wanted transfers out of the ER, one who wanted a raise, another who wanted to quit entirely. Kate handled them all with the same calm efficiency she'd brought to every trauma bay. By 5 p.m., she was exhausted. She was packing up when her phone rang. Reynolds. You survived day 1, he said. Barely. Wolf's being discharged tomorrow. His team wants you there. Kate hesitated. I don't think... Not asking. They want to thank you. Let them. The call ended. Kate drove home as the sun set over Creston Falls. Her apartment was small, 1 bedroom, kitchen barely big enough to turn around in, furniture from thrift stores. She'd been here 6 months and still hadn't unpacked half her boxes. She sat on the couch and pulled out the Morrison letter, read it again. Thank you for making his last moments less frightening. Kate folded the letter carefully and put it away. Then she opened her laptop and started drafting new protocols for the ER. Equipment maintenance schedules. Staffing ratios. Training requirements. Supply chain management. She worked until midnight. Tuesday morning, she was back at the hospital at 6 a.m. The rhythm was starting to feel familiar. Check the ER. Review overnight charts. Meet with staff. Handle crises. Drink bad coffee. Repeat. At 10 a.m., she walked to Wolf's room. He was dressed in clean BD-us, sitting on the edge of his bed, looking human again. Colonel Reynolds stood nearby. So did 6 other soldiers, Wolf's team, Kate realized. They all turned when she entered. Wolf stood carefully. Director Brennan. Major. My team wanted to meet you. The 6 soldiers stepped forward one by one. Staff Sergeant Martinez, Specialist Kim, Corporal Davis. 2 others whose ranks blurred together. They shook her hand, thanked her, told her stories about Wolf that made him groan. Then the last one stepped forward. younger than the others, baby-faced, probably not even 25. "Sergeant Brennan?" His voice cracked slightly. "I'm Private First Class Aaron Morrison." Kate's world stopped. "Morrison?" she whispered. "David was my brother." Aaron's eyes were bright. "I joined up after he died, wanted to finish what he started. Major Wolf told me you were the medic who was with him at the end." Kate couldn't breathe. "I just wanted to say thank you for staying with him, for trying." Aaron pulled something from his pocket, a dog tag. "This was David's. My parents gave it to me when I deployed, but I think you should have it." He pressed the dog tag into Kate's palm. Kate's vision blurred. "He would have wanted you to have it," Aaron continued. "Would have wanted you to know that we don't blame you, that we know you did everything you could." Kate's fingers closed around the dog tag. Around her, Wolf's team stood silent, respectful. Reynolds watched from the doorway, and Kate finally understood something she'd been running from for 6 years. She couldn't save everyone, but she'd never stopped trying, and maybe that was enough. She left the hospital at noon, the dog tag hanging around her neck beside her own tags, and drove back to her apartment with no particular destination in mind. The sky was clear, the air was cold. Creston Falls looked almost pretty in the winter light. Her phone buzzed. A text from Jimmy. "ER's swamped. Vicky asked if you could come in. Said she needs backup." Kate smiled, typed back. "On my way." She was halfway back to the hospital when another text came through. "Unknown number. Director Brennan, this is Patricia Rains from the VA. One of my patients saw the news coverage about Riverside General. He's a vet with complex PTSD, doesn't trust civilian hospitals, but he said he'd come in if you were the one treating him. Can we set something up?" Kate pulled over, stared at the message. Then another text arrived. Different number. "Kate Brennan? This is Sarah Morrison, Aaron's and David's mother. We saw you on the news. We'd like to meet you if you're willing. We have some things that belong to David we think you should have." Kate's hands shook. One more text. This one from Reynolds. "Army's putting together a ceremony for Wolf's team. Full honors. They want you there. As a guest. Thought you should know." Kate sat in her car on the side of the road, messages piling up on her phone, and realized something. She'd spent 6 years trying to disappear. And in 3 days, she'd become visible in ways she never imagined. The question was whether she could handle it. Her phone rang. She answered. "Director Brennan?" An unfamiliar voice, female, professional. "This is Agent Sarah Kowalski, FBI. We need you to come to the federal building downtown. Now." Kate's stomach dropped. "Why?" "We've uncovered something in Pike's records, something that involves you directly. And it's bigger than healthcare fraud." "What is it?" "Not over the phone. How soon can you be here?" Kate checked her watch. 20 minutes. "Make it 15. The call ended. Kate stared at her phone. Then she started the car and drove toward downtown Creston Falls, the dog tag cold against her chest, and a feeling in her gut that told her the last 3 days had been just the beginning. Whatever the FBI had found, it was about to change everything again. The federal building was a concrete block downtown, all sharp angles and tinted windows that reflected nothing back. Kate parked in the visitor lot and walked through security with her hands steady and her mind racing. Agent Kowalski met her in the lobby, mid-40s, dark suit, blonde hair pulled back tight enough to hurt. "Director Brennan, this way." No pleasantries, no explanation, just footsteps echoing down a hallway that smelled like industrial carpet and old coffee. They entered a conference room on the 3rd floor. 2 other agents waited inside, both men, both looking like they hadn't slept recently. A laptop sat open on the table connected to a projector, files stacked in neat rows. A digital recorder blinking red. Kowalski gestured to a chair. "Sit." Kate sat. "We've been building a case against Gordon Pike for 6 months, Kowalski started. Medicare fraud, falsified records, standard corruption. But 3 days ago, we found something else buried in his personal files. Something that changes the scope of this investigation." She clicked the laptop. The projector hummed to life. A spreadsheet appeared on the wall. Names, dates, dollar amounts. Kate scanned the columns, not understanding at first. Then she saw her own name halfway down. "What is this?" "Insurance claims filed by Riverside General over the past 2 years. Pike was systematically billing for procedures that never happened, medications that were never administered, Equipment that was never used. Kowalski clicked again. Another spreadsheet. But that's just fraud. This is where it gets interesting. A new document appeared. Military service records, medical histories, discharge summaries. Kate's chest tightened. Pike specifically targeted veterans, Kowalski continued. He knew they'd have VA coverage, knew their records were complicated, knew they'd be less likely to question billing errors or challenge treatment decisions. She paused. 3 veterans died at Riverside General in 3 months, all under circumstances that should have been survivable. Kate's hands curled into fists. He killed them. Not directly, but he created conditions where deaths became inevitable. Understaffing, inadequate equipment, delayed care, all to cut costs and maximize billing. Kowalski's voice hardened. And when those patients died, he filed claims for treatments they never received in their final hours. One of the male agents spoke up. We have evidence of over 40 fraudulent claims tied to veteran patients. Total value exceeds $3 million. Kate felt sick. But here's what we need you for. Kowalski clicked to another document. Kate's incident reports. Every single one she'd filed over 6 months. Your documentation gave us the timeline, gave us proof of negligence, but we need something else. What? Testimony. Expert medical testimony about what should have happened versus what actually happened. Someone who can explain to a jury exactly how Pike's cost-cutting measures killed people. Kate stared at the wall. You want me to testify against him? In federal court, under oath, with every detail of your military service on the record. Kowalski met her eyes. Your past will come out. The classified missions, the combat injuries, everything you've been hiding for 6 years. It'll be public, permanent. No taking it back. The room went quiet. Kate's pulse hammered in her ears. 6 years of carefully constructed anonymity wiped out in a courtroom. 6 years of trying to be normal, destroyed under cross-examination. 6 years of hiding from the person she used to be, exposed for everyone to see. When? Kate asked. Preliminary hearing is in 2 weeks. Full trial starts in January. That's fast. Federal prosecutors want this case locked down before Pike's lawyers can bury evidence, which means we need your deposition by Friday. Kate looked at the spreadsheets, at the names of dead veterans, at the dollar amounts Pike had stolen from their deaths. I'll do it, Kowalski exhaled. Good. Because there's one more thing. She clicked to a final document. A photograph appeared. Gordon Pike in a restaurant booth, shaking hands with someone Kate didn't recognize. Date stamp showed 3 months ago. Who was that? State Medical Board Director, Dr. Raymond Voss. Kowalski zoomed in on their faces. They met 6 times in the past year, always off the record, always in places without security cameras except this one. Kate leaned forward. What were they discussing? We don't know yet, but Voss has oversight authority for every hospital in the state, and right after each meeting, inspection reports for Riverside General came back clean despite documented violations. The implications hit Kate like a fist. Voss was covering for Pike. That's our theory. Which means this isn't just hospital fraud, it's systematic corruption across state healthcare oversight. Kowalski closed the laptop. And if we're right, Pike wasn't working alone. He was part of something bigger. Kate drove back to Riverside General in a fog. The sky had clouded over, threatening snow. Traffic moved slowly. Her phone kept buzzing with messages she didn't read. By the time she reached the hospital, it was past 2 p.m. The ER was chaos. 3 ambulances in the bay, alarms screaming, staff running between rooms. Kate walked through the doors and immediately got pulled into it. Director Brennan, thank God! Jimmy appeared at her elbow, looking frantic. Multi-vehicle accident on Highway 9, 6 patients incoming, 2 critical. Halford's freaking out and Vicky's... Where's Vicky? Trauma 2. Running the first critical. Kate pushed through the crowd. Found Trauma Bay 2 packed with people. Vicky stood at the head of the bed, calling out orders with the same sharpness Kate remembered from her first week. But her hands were steady now, her voice clear. The patient was a teenage girl, unconscious, with obvious head trauma. Pressure's dropping, one of the residents called out. Increase pressors, Vicky snapped. And someone page neurosurgery now, not 5 minutes from now. Kate stepped into the room. Status? Vicky looked up, relief flashing across her face. 16-year-old female, ejected from vehicle, GCS-3 on scene, blown right pupil. We're trying to stabilize for CT, but she's herniating and you need surgery immediately. Kate moved to the bedside. Who's on call for neuro? Dr. Patterson. He's in surgery, won't be available for an hour. She doesn't have an hour. Kate grabbed the phone, called the OR directly, explained the situation in terms that left no room for argument, demanded they prep a room immediately and pull Patterson out of his current case if necessary. Argued with an OR supervisor who cited protocol. Kate cited Federal Oversight Authority and a dead teenager if they wasted time. The OR supervisor capitulated. Room 3, 10 minutes. Kate hung up, looked at Vicky. Get her upstairs, now. They moved as a unit. Kate, Vicky, 2 residents, respiratory therapy. The girl's vitals were circling the drain, but they kept her alive through pure momentum and muscle memory. Patterson met them in the OR hallway, looking annoyed until he saw the patient's pupils. Then his face went professional. We'll take it from here. Kate stepped back. Let them disappear through the surgical doors. Vicky stood beside her, breathing hard. Think she'll make it? Depends on how fast Patterson moves. She's 16. I know. They walked back to the ER in silence. 5 more patients from the accident were being triaged. Broken bones, lacerations, one with possible internal bleeding. Halford moved between them, looking overwhelmed but functional. Kate jumped in. For the next 3 hours, she forgot about federal investigations and courtroom testimony, forgot about Pike and corruption and everything except the immediate problem in front of her. Suture this laceration, stabilize that fracture, order these labs, review those scans. This was what she understood. This was what made sense. By 6 p.m., the crisis had passed. All patients stabilized or admitted. The ER had returned to its usual controlled chaos. Kate found Vicky in the break room, drinking coffee that looked like it had been sitting since morning. She made it, Vicky said without looking up. Patterson just called. The girl's in recovery. Critical, but stable. Kate sat down. Good. I almost froze when she came in. Almost couldn't do it. But you didn't freeze. Because you were there. Kate shook her head. You were already running that room when I walked in. You didn't need me. Vicky finally looked at her. I've been a nurse for 22 years. Today's the first time in 6 months I actually felt like one. Then feel like one every day. It's not that simple. It never is. Kate stood. But you made a choice today. Make the same choice tomorrow and the day after. Eventually it stops feeling like a choice and starts feeling like who you are. She left Vicky sitting there and returned to her office. The sun was setting. Her desk was buried under paperwork. Budget reports, staffing schedules, equipment requisition forms, all the mundane administrative work that came with actually running a department. Kate was halfway through a supply chain analysis when her door opened without a knock. Colonel Reynolds stepped inside, his face grim. We have a problem. Kate set down her pen. What kind? The kind where someone's trying to make sure you never testify. Reynolds closed the door. Agent Kowalski called me 20 minutes ago. Pike's legal team filed a motion to block your deposition. On what grounds? They're claiming your military service creates a conflict of interest, that you're biased against their client because he fired you, that your testimony would be prejudicial. Reynolds sat down. It's bullshit, but it might work. Kate's jaw tightened. So they're trying to silence me before I can talk. They're trying to discredit you, make you look like a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. Reynolds pulled out his tablet. But there's more. Pike's lawyers also filed a countersuit against you personally, claiming you orchestrated his arrest to cover up your own misconduct. That's insane. It's strategic. They're trying to put you on the defensive, make you fight to protect yourself instead of focusing on testimony. Kate stood, walked to the window. Outside, the parking lot was filling with evening shift arrivals. What do I do? You show up Friday. You give your deposition. You tell the truth and let the lawyers fight over the rest. Reynolds paused. But Kate, you need to understand something. Pike's lawyers are going to come at you hard. They'll dig into every moment of your military service, every mission, every patient you lost. They'll try to break you. I don't break. Everyone breaks. The question is whether you break before or after you finish testifying. Kate turned. I'll finish. Good. Because there's one more thing you need to know. Reynolds tapped his tablet. An image appeared, the same photograph Kowalski had shown earlier, Pike and Voss in that restaurant booth. We identified the other person in that photo, Reynolds said, the one partially visible in the background. He zoomed in. Another face came into focus. Kate's blood went cold. That's Dr. Marcus Halford, Reynolds said quietly. He was at the same meeting. Kate stared at the photograph, at Halford's face, partially obscured by shadow but unmistakable. When was this taken? 4 months ago. 2 weeks after the first veteran died. Kate's mind raced. Halford, the same doctor who'd filed a complaint against her, who'd tried to stop her from treating Wolf, who'd been conveniently absent every time she documented a violation. You think Halford's involved? I think he knew more than he's admitted, and I think you need to be very careful about who you trust in this hospital. Reynolds stood. Kowalski's bringing him in for questioning tomorrow morning, but until we know what he knew and when he knew it, watch your back. He left. Kate stood alone in her office, staring at that photograph. Halford had sat across from her yesterday, apologized, talked about change, and the whole time he might have been part of the same corruption that killed 3 people. Her phone buzzed, a text from Jimmy. Halford just left. Didn't say where he was going. Looked upset. Thought you should know. Kate grabbed her jacket and ran. She found Halford in the parking lot, climbing into his car. Kate sprinted across the asphalt and yanked his door open before he could start the engine. Get out! Halford's face went white. What? I said get out, now. He stumbled out of the car. Kate backed him against the driver's door. How long have you known? She demanded. Known what? About Pike, about the fraud, about the meetings with Voss. Kate's voice was steel. How long have you been part of this? Halford's eyes went wide. I don't know what you're talking about. You were at a meeting with Pike and Voss 4 months ago. Federal investigators have photos. The color drained from Halford's face. That wasn't... I didn't know what they were planning. But you knew something. Halford's legs buckled. He slid down against the car. Pike called me. Said there was a problem with Medicare billing. Said he needed a doctor to sign off on some charts to correct errors. I thought it was routine. What charts? Patients who died. He said their records were incomplete, that we needed to document treatments that had been administered but not properly recorded. Kate's stomach twisted. You falsified medical records for dead patients. I thought I was fixing mistakes. Pike said it was a paperwork problem. He said if we didn't correct the records, the hospital could lose accreditation. Halford looked up at her, his face desperate. I didn't know he was billing for treatments that never happened. I swear I didn't know. How many records did you sign? 5, maybe 6. Names. I don't remember. Kate grabbed his collar. Names. Halford rattled off 5 names. Kate recognized 3 of them from Kowalski's spreadsheet. Veterans who died, whose deaths Pike had turned into profit. You have to believe me, Halford said. I didn't know. When I found out, when the federal investigation started, I realized what I'd done. That's why I've been avoiding you. That's why I've been sick. I didn't know how to tell you. Kate released him, stepped back. You're going to tell the FBI everything tomorrow morning. Every meeting, every chart, every conversation. I'll lose my license. You should lose more than that. Kate's voice was cold. But if you cooperate, maybe they'll go easier on you. Maybe. She turned to walk away. Kate. She stopped. I really didn't know, Halford said quietly. I was stupid. I was arrogant, but I didn't know I was helping him kill people. Kate looked back at him. Neither did I, until I did. And then I did something about it. She left him sitting there in the parking lot and walked back into the hospital. Inside, the ER hummed, patients waiting, staff working, the eternal machinery of healthcare grinding forward. Kate found Jimmy at the nurse's station. Call Agent Kowalski, she said. Tell her Halford's ready to talk. And tell her I'll be at the federal building first thing tomorrow with everything I've documented about Pike's operation. Jimmy's eyes widened. This is really happening. Yeah. You're taking down the whole system. I'm just telling the truth. Kate looked around the ER, at the staff who'd spent months dismissing her, at the department she now ran, at the patients who depended on all of them. The system takes itself down. She climbed back to her office, sat at her desk, pulled up every incident report she'd ever filed, and started building a timeline. Every violation, every pattern, every death that could have been prevented. She documented it all with the same precision she'd used to document battlefield injuries. Clinical, thorough, damning. By midnight, she had 40 pages. By 2 a.m., she had 60. At 3 a.m., her door opened. Kate looked up, expecting security or a janitor. Colonel Reynolds stood there instead, his face carved from granite. "You need to see this." He handed her his tablet. A news article, posted 20 minutes ago. The headline read, "Former Riverside General Director found dead in custody." Kate's hands shook as she read. Gordon Pike had been found unresponsive in his holding cell an hour ago. Apparent suicide. Preliminary investigation ongoing, but the final paragraph made her blood freeze. Sources close to the investigation say Pike left a note claiming he was being silenced by federal agents who fabricated evidence against him. He named multiple individuals he alleged were part of a conspiracy to destroy his reputation, including former Army medic Kate Brennan, now director of Riverside General's emergency services. Kate looked up at Reynolds. "He's making me look like I killed him. His lawyers are making you look like you killed him. Pike was a coward, but he wasn't stupid. That note was written by someone who knew exactly how to create reasonable doubt." Reynolds' voice was tight. And now the FBI's entire case just got a lot more complicated. Kate's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, text messages, calls from numbers she didn't recognize. One text stood out. From an unknown number. "You should have stayed quiet. Now everyone will know what you really are." Kate stared at the message. Then another one arrived. "Check the news in 5 minutes." Reynolds was already pulling up news feeds on his tablet. They waited. At 3:17 a.m., another article dropped. A different outlet, different angle. This one had photographs. Of Kate in uniform. Of her military records, partially redacted but enough to identify missions, locations, classified operations. Of incident reports from Riverside General with her name highlighted. The headline, "Hospital Director's Secret Military Past Raises Questions About Federal Investigation." The article painted Kate as a government operative planted in Riverside General to manufacture evidence against Pike. Suggested her combat background made her dangerous. Implied her testimony was part of a coordinated takedown orchestrated by federal agencies with ulterior motives. It was character assassination dressed up as investigative journalism. And it was working. Comments already flooded the article. People calling for Kate's resignation, demanding investigations, threatening violence. "Who leaked this?" Kate whispered. Reynolds' face was stone. Someone with access to sealed military records and federal case files. Someone inside the system. Voss? Probably. Or someone working for him. Reynolds looked at her. "Kate, you need protection. If they're willing to kill Pike and burn your reputation, they won't stop there." Kate set down the tablet. Her hands were steady again. "Let them come." "This isn't a combat zone." "Yes, it is." Kate met his eyes. "It's just fought with lawyers and leaked documents instead of bullets. But it's still war, and I don't retreat." Reynolds studied her for a long moment. "Then we fight. But we fight smart." "Agreed. Starting with Halford's testimony tomorrow." "And yours Friday?" Kate nodded. "And mine Friday." She looked out the window at Creston Falls in the dead of night. Somewhere out there, someone was trying to destroy her. Someone with power and connections and resources she couldn't match. But they'd made one mistake. They'd assumed she'd back down. Kate turned back to Reynolds. "I need you to do something for me." "Name it." "Contact every veteran patient who was treated at this hospital in the past 2 years. Every single one. Tell them what Pike did. Tell them their records were falsified, and ask them if they want justice." Reynolds raised an eyebrow. "You're building an army." "I'm building a witness list." Kate's voice was cold. "Pike tried to profit from their service. Now they get to return the favor." At 3:42 a.m., Kate's phone rang. Agent Kowalski. "I assume you've seen the news," Kowalski said without preamble. "Yeah. We need to move fast. Pike's death changes everything. His lawyers are going to argue prosecutorial misconduct. They'll try to get the entire case thrown out. Can they? Not if we have enough evidence to proceed without Pike's testimony, which means we need yours, and Halford's, and every veteran who was victimized. Kowalski paused. Kate, this is going to get ugly. Are you ready? Kate looked at her office, at the hospital beyond, at the ER she'd fought to protect. I've been ready for 6 years. Good. Because Friday morning, you're going to walk into that deposition room, and Pike's lawyers are going to try to tear you apart. They'll attack your service, your competence, your motives, every decision you ever made. Let them try. One more thing. We have reason to believe someone's trying to intimidate witnesses. 2 veterans who agreed to testify have received threatening calls. Another found his car vandalized. Kowalski's voice hardened. Watch your back. The call ended. Kate sat in the darkness of her office and felt the weight of it all settling on her shoulders. Not crushing, just there, heavy but manageable. Her door opened again. This time, Vicky stood there. I saw the news, Vicky said quietly. The article, the accusations. Kate waited. I just wanted to say, Vicky stopped. Started again. When I covered for Pike, I told myself I was just following orders, that it wasn't my responsibility, that someone else would fix it if it really mattered. She stepped into the office. But you didn't wait for someone else. You fixed it yourself, even when it cost you everything. I haven't lost everything yet. No, but you might, and you're doing it anyway. Vicky's eyes were red. That's what a real nurse looks like. Took me 22 years to remember. She left. Kate turned back to her computer, pulled up the deposition prep documents Kowalski had sent. 47 questions, each one designed to establish timeline, competence, and credibility, each one a potential minefield. Kate started drafting answers. At 5:58 a.m., as dawn broke over Creston Falls, Kate's phone buzzed one final time. A text from Jimmy. Just got to work. Someone spray-painted your car. You need to see this. Kate grabbed her jacket and ran downstairs. Her Civic sat in the employee lot where she'd parked it yesterday. Across the driver's side, in red paint that dripped like blood, someone had written, murderer. Kate stood there, staring at the word, as hospital staff arrived for day shift, as people slowed down to look, as phones came out to take pictures. Reynolds appeared at her side. We're filing a police report. Won't matter. They're trying to scare me. Is it working? Kate reached into her pocket, pulled out David Morrison's dog tags, felt the cold metal against her palm. No, she said. It's making me angry. She looked up at Riverside General, at the hospital she'd fought to fix, at the ER where patients were already arriving, at the windows where staff watched. They want a war? Kate said quietly. Let's give them one. Behind her, someone cleared their throat. Kate turned. Dr. Raymond Voss stood 10 feet away, flanked by 2 men in expensive suits. His face was calm, composed, the kind of calm that came from holding all the cards. Director Brennan, Voss said, we need to talk about Friday, about your testimony, about choices that might be in everyone's best interest. Reynolds stepped forward, hand moving toward his sidearm, but Kate put a hand on his arm, stepped toward Voss instead. I don't negotiate with criminals. Voss smiled. Then you should have stayed in the army, because this isn't a battlefield, and the rules here are very different. He handed her an envelope. Read that. Think carefully. And remember, some enemies you can't fight with courage and incident reports. Some enemies you have to survive. He walked away, his lawyers following like shadows. Kate opened the envelope. Inside was a single document, a motion to revoke her medical license, filed by the state medical board. Grounds: mental instability stemming from untreated combat trauma. Supporting evidence: 6 years of classified mission reports documenting her exposure to combat stress. Psychological evaluations: incident reports from her final deployment, everything she'd buried, everything she'd run from, all weaponized against her. Kate looked up at the hospital, at Reynolds beside her, at the word murderer dripping down her car. And she realized the real fight hadn't even started yet. Kate stood in the parking lot holding the motion to revoke her license while Reynolds made a phone call she couldn't hear. Around them, Hospital staff pretended not to stare, while absolutely staring. Her car dripped red paint onto the asphalt. The envelope felt heavier than it should. Reynolds finished his call and turned. Legal team says the motion's garbage. Combat trauma doesn't disqualify you from medical practice. They're grasping. They're warning me. Kate folded the document. Voss wants me to know he can destroy my career even if the criminal case moves forward. So what do you do? Kate looked at the hospital. At the ER entrance where an ambulance was pulling in. At the windows of her office 4 floors up. I go to work. She walked inside, left the vandalized car, left Reynolds making more calls, left the gathering crowd of onlookers. The ER swallowed her immediately. A cardiac arrest in Bay 4, a pediatric seizure in Bay 2, an elderly man with stroke symptoms waiting for CT. Kate moved through it all with mechanical precision, assessing, directing, documenting. The rhythm was familiar, comforting even. At 9 a.m., Agent Kowalski called. Halford's here. He's talking. You need to hear this. Kate found an empty office and pulled up the video feed Kowalski sent. Halford sat across from 2 agents in an interrogation room, his face gray, his hands shaking. Pike approached me 18 months ago, Halford said on screen. Said the hospital was bleeding money. Said we needed to get creative with billing to stay afloat. I thought he meant optimizing codes, standard stuff. But then he started asking me to sign charts for patients I'd never treated. One of the agents leaned forward. And you signed them. He said they were clerical errors, that treatments had been administered but not properly documented. He made it sound routine. Halford's voice cracked. I didn't ask questions. I should have, but I didn't. How many charts? 8, maybe 10. I lost count. Were you paid? Halford hesitated. Pike arranged for me to receive consulting fees, $20,000 over 6 months. He called it compensation for administrative work. You were being paid to falsify records. I didn't see it that way at the time. The agent slid a photograph across the table. Tell us about this meeting. Kate watched Halford's face go white as he stared at the photo of him with Pike and Voss. That was 4 months ago. Pike said Voss wanted to discuss inspection protocols, said it was routine coordination between the hospital and state oversight. What did you discuss? Voss asked about veteran patient outcomes, asked if we'd had any complications, any deaths. Halford stopped. Pike told him everything was fine, that we'd had a few unfortunate cases but nothing unusual. Voss seemed satisfied. Did he ask to see records? No, that's what felt wrong. He should have wanted documentation. Should have asked for charts or incident reports, but he just accepted Pike's word and left. The agent made notes. Did Pike say anything after Voss left? He said we were protected, that as long as Voss ran the state board, nobody would look too closely at Riverside General. Halford's hands clenched. That's when I started to understand what I'd gotten involved in. But you didn't report it. I was terrified. Pike made it clear that if I talked, he'd destroy me. Said he had documentation proving I'd initiated the fraudulent billing, that he'd make me the scapegoat. So you stayed quiet, until Brennan started filing incident reports, until the federal investigation started, until I realized people had died because of what we did. The feed cut off. Kate stared at the blank screen. Her phone rang. Kowalski. You watched? Yeah. Halford's testimony gives us leverage. We can prove Voss knew about the fraud and actively covered for Pike. Combined with your documentation, we have a case. Kowalski paused. But Kate, Voss isn't going down easy. That motion against your license is just the opening move. What's the next move? Hard to say. But people like Voss don't get to where they are without connections. Expect more pressure, more attacks, more attempts to discredit you before Friday. Kate ended the call, sat in the empty office, felt the walls pressing in. Then she stood up and went back to work. By noon, news of Pike's death had spread through the hospital like wildfire. Staff whispered in corners. Patients asked questions. The local news ran stories every hour, each one more sensational than the last. Kate ignored it all. She ran the ER, reviewed cases, made decisions, acted like her entire professional life wasn't collapsing around her. At 1 p.m., Vicky found her in the medication room. You're not going to address it? Kate counted pills. Address what? The news. The accusations, the motion against your license. Vicky's voice rose. Half the staff thinks you're a hero. The other half thinks you're a conspiracy theorist who drove Pike to suicide. You need to say something. I need to do my job. Kate, My job, Kate repeated, turning to face her, is keeping patients alive, not managing public opinion, not defending myself against accusations I can't disprove until Friday. My job is here, in this ER, with these patients. Everything else is noise. Vicky stared at her. How are you so calm? I'm not calm. I'm focused. There's a difference. Kate pushed past her and returned to the floor. But Vicky was right about one thing. The staff was fracturing. Kate could feel it in the way people avoided eye contact, in the conversations that stopped when she approached, in the tension that followed her through every hallway. At 3 p.m., Jimmy pulled her aside. There's a problem. Another one? Dr. Chen from cardiology is refusing to consult on your patients. Says he won't take orders from someone under investigation for mental instability. Kate's jaw tightened. Who else? Ortho's being difficult. Radiology is slow-walking your scans. And 2 of the day shift nurses called in sick after they saw the news. Jimmy looked uncomfortable. People are scared, Kate. Scared of being associated with you if this goes bad. Kate pulled out her phone, called Reynolds. I need you to do something. Name it. Contact every military unit Wolf served with, every soldier I treated, every officer who worked with me. I need character witnesses. I need people who can testify about my service, about my competence, about who I actually am. That'll take time. You have until Friday morning. She hung up. The afternoon deteriorated further. A trauma patient needed emergency surgery, but the surgical attending refused to accept the consult until he'd personally reviewed Kate's assessment. By the time he agreed the patient needed intervention, they'd lost 30 minutes. Kate documented everything, every delay, every refusal, every instance of obstruction, because if they wanted to play games, she'd make sure there was a record. At 6 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number. Director Brennan, this is Teresa Morrison, David and Aaron's mother. Kate's chest tightened. Mrs. Morrison. I saw the news, the accusations, the motion against your license. Teresa's voice was steady. I wanted you to know that's not the woman Aaron described to us, not the woman who stayed with David when he was dying. Kate's throat closed. My husband and I want to help. If you need character witnesses, if you need people to testify about who you really are, we'll do it. Mrs. Morrison, David wrote about you in his letters home, wrote about the medic who made everyone feel safe, who treated every wounded soldier like they mattered, who refused to give up on anyone. Teresa's voice wavered. That's who you are. Not what those people are saying, and we won't let them destroy you. Kate couldn't speak. We'll be at your deposition Friday, Teresa continued, my husband and I, and we'll tell anyone who'll listen what kind of person you are. The call ended. Kate sat in her office with tears running down her face and David Morrison's dog tags cold against her chest. At 7 p.m., Reynolds arrived with news. I've got 12 soldiers willing to testify, 8 who served with you directly, 4 who served with Wolf and witnessed your work in Kandahar, all willing to fly in for Friday. Kate looked up. That fast? You saved their lives. They're not going to let someone destroy yours. Reynolds pulled out his tablet. But there's something else. We've been digging into Voss's background, found some interesting connections. He showed her a network diagram. Voss at the center, lines connecting to Pike, to 3 other hospital administrators, to 2 state legislators, to a pharmaceutical distributor. Voss has been running this operation for years, not just at Riverside General, 5 other hospitals across the state. Same pattern, inflated billing, falsified records, veteran patients targeted. Pike wasn't the architect. He was middle management. Kate stared at the diagram. How much money are we talking about? Conservative estimate? $15 million over 4 years. And Voss took a cut. Voss took the biggest cut. We have bank records showing payments from shell companies connected to all 6 hospitals. $2 million in his personal accounts. Kate stood. Does Kowalski know? She's building a case against him right now. But Kate, this makes you even more dangerous to them. You're not just a witness against Pike anymore. You're a witness against an entire criminal network. They're going to come at you harder. As if on cue, Kate's phone buzzed. Another unknown number. She answered. Heavy breathing. Then a distorted voice. You should have taken the deal. Now you're going to lose everything. The line went dead. Kate looked at Reynolds. They're escalating. We need to get you protection. I don't need protection. I need evidence. Kate grabbed her jacket. Where does Voss live? Kate? Where? Reynolds hesitated, then pulled up an address. North Side, gated community. But you can't just... Kate was already walking. She drove to Voss's neighborhood in the Civic with murderer still dripping down the side. The gate guard looked at her twice, but let her through when she showed her hospital ID and said she was delivering urgent medical documents. Voss's house was a colonial mansion, all white columns and manicured lawns. 3 cars in the driveway, each worth more than Kate made in a year. Kate parked on the street, walked up the driveway, rang the doorbell. Voss answered, his face shifting from surprise to calculated calm. Director Brennan, this is unexpected. We need to talk. I don't think that's appropriate. My lawyers advised, I'm not here to negotiate. I'm here to offer you a choice. Kate met his eyes. You're going to withdraw the motion against my license. You're going to tell your lawyers to back off, and you're going to cooperate with federal investigators. Voss laughed. Or what? Or I testify Friday. I tell them everything. About the network. About the other hospitals. About the $15 million you've stolen. And I make sure every veteran organization in the country knows you profited from dead soldiers. Voss's smile faded. You have no proof. I have 12 soldiers willing to testify. I have bank records. I have a federal investigation that's about to expand from 1 hospital to 6. And I have a very motivated FBI agent who spent 3 months building a case against you. Kate stepped closer. The only question is whether you go down quietly or loudly. Your choice. Voss's jaw tightened. You're bluffing. Try me. They stood there on his front porch, neither moving. Then Voss's phone rang. He glanced at the screen. His face went pale. You need to leave. Why? Who's calling? Leave. Now. But Kate didn't move, and through the doorway behind Voss she saw movement. Someone else in the house. A woman appeared, mid-50s, well-dressed, holding a tablet. Raymond, who's... She stopped when she saw Kate. Dr. Brennan? Kate stared. Mrs. Voss? But the woman shook her head. Sharon Whitmore, State Inspector General. The world tilted. Whitmore looked at Voss. We need to talk. Inside. Now. She turned to Kate. You should come too. Kate followed them into a house that smelled like old money and new lies. Whitmore led them to a study lined with law books Voss had probably never read. How long have you been here? Kate asked. 6 hours, since the moment Halford started talking. Whitmore set her tablet on the desk. Federal investigators called me this morning, told me about the network, about Voss's involvement, asked me to conduct a parallel state investigation. Voss sat down heavily. This is harassment. This is accountability. Whitmore tapped her tablet. I've spent the last 6 hours reviewing financial records, inspection reports, and personnel files. I found enough evidence to support criminal charges against you for fraud, bribery, and obstruction of justice. You can't prove... I can prove you accepted payments from Pike. I can prove you falsified inspection reports. I can prove you blocked investigations into 3 hospitals with documented safety violations. Whitmore's voice was ice. And I can prove you used your position to protect a network that killed people. Voss's hands shook. I want my lawyer. You'll get one, but first I want to know something. Whitmore looked at Kate. How did you figure it out? Kate pulled out her phone, showed the network diagram Reynolds had sent. Federal investigators connected the dots. I just followed the money. Whitmore studied the diagram. This is more than Pike. This is systematic corruption across state healthcare oversight. Yeah. How long have you known? Since this morning. Whitmore looked at Voss. Did you really think you could bury this? Did you think threatening 1 nurse would make 6 hospitals worth of fraud disappear? Voss said nothing. Here's what happens next, Whitmore continued. You're going to resign from the state medical board. You're going to cooperate fully with federal and state investigators. And you're going to withdraw every motion, every legal action, every threat against Dr. Brennan and anyone else who tried to expose this. And if I refuse, then I charge you with everything we have right now. You go to trial, you get convicted, you spend the next 20 years in federal prison. Whitmore leaned forward. Or you cooperate. You provide evidence against everyone else in your network, and maybe, you get a reduced sentence. Voss looked at Kate. This is what you wanted. What I wanted, Kate said quietly, was for you to stop killing people. This is just what you earned. Whitmore made a call. 20 minutes later, state police arrived. They took Voss into custody with the kind of polite efficiency that made it clear this wasn't his house anymore. Whitmore walked Kate outside. You should know something, Whitmore said. Pike didn't kill himself. Preliminary autopsy shows signs of foul play. Someone wanted him dead before he could testify. Kate's blood went cold. Who? We're investigating, but whoever it was had access to his holding cell and enough knowledge to make it look like suicide. Whitmore paused. Watch your back, Dr. Brennan. This network is bigger than we thought, and they're willing to kill to protect it. Kate drove back to the hospital in the dark. Her phone kept buzzing with messages. Reynolds wanting updates. Kowalski demanding she call immediately. Jimmy asking where she was. She ignored them all. At the hospital, the night shift was starting. Kate parked in her usual spot. The vandalized paint had mostly dried. She walked inside. The ER was packed. A multi-vehicle accident had just arrived. 3 critical patients, staff running everywhere. Kate dropped her jacket and jumped in. For the next 4 hours, she forgot about Voss and Pike and federal investigations. She forgot about motions against her license and death threats and corruption networks. She forgot about everything except the work. Stabilize this patient, intubate that one, order these scans, review those labs. This was what she understood. This was what made sense. At midnight, all 3 patients were stable, admitted to ICU. The ER quieted. Kate found Jimmy in the break room. Heard you arrested Voss, he said. I didn't arrest anyone. State Inspector General did. Same difference. You took down 2 corrupt administrators in 1 week. That's got to be some kind of record. Kate poured coffee. It's not over. What do you mean? Pike was murdered. Voss is cooperating, but there are others. The network is bigger than just 2 people. Jimmy's smile faded. How much bigger? We don't know yet. Kate's phone rang. Reynolds. You need to see this. Now. She met him in the parking lot. He handed her his tablet without a word. A video file. Time-stamped from Pike's holding cell. The angle showed Pike sitting on his bunk, writing something. Then the camera cut to static. When it resumed, Pike was hanging from a bedsheet. Cameras were hacked, Reynolds said. Whoever did this knew how to bypass security systems. How long was the feed dead? 47 seconds. Just enough time to kill him and stage the scene. Kate watched the video again. Who has that kind of access? Someone with serious resources. Someone with inside connections. Reynolds took back the tablet. FBI's investigating. But Kate, this means they're willing to kill to keep this quiet. You need to be careful. Kate looked up at the hospital, at the windows glowing in the darkness. They already tried to scare me, tried to discredit me, tried to destroy my career. She turned to Reynolds. What else do they have? I don't know, but people who kill witnesses don't stop at one. Kate's phone buzzed. A text from Kowalski. We found something in Voss's files. You need to come to the federal building. Tonight. Kate showed Reynolds. Let's go. They arrived at the federal building at 1 a.m. Kowalski met them in the same conference room where this had all started. We've been going through Voss's personal records. Found encrypted files on his home computer. Took our tech team 4 hours to crack them. Kowalski pulled up a spreadsheet. This is a list of payments Voss received over 4 years. $2 million, like we thought. But look at who else got paid. Kate scanned the list. Saw names she didn't recognize. Hospital administrators, state officials. And near the bottom, her stomach dropped. That's impossible. But the name was there. Clear as day. Colonel Mason Reed, Reynolds' commanding officer. The man who'd brought Wolf to Riverside General. The man who'd convinced Kate to take the director position. Reed had received 3 payments over 18 months. Total value, $300,000. Kate looked at Reynolds. His face had gone white. "There has to be an explanation," Reynolds said. "There is." Kowalski clicked to another document. Reed was being paid to steer military patients to hospitals in Voss's network, to ensure veteran casualties ended up at facilities where their records could be manipulated for billing fraud. "Reed's one of the good ones," Reynolds insisted. "I've served with him for 15 years. He wouldn't—" "He did." Kowalski's voice was flat. "And we have proof. Bank records, encrypted emails, meeting logs. Reed was part of this from the beginning." Kate sat down. "Wolf's injuries, the mission that brought him to Riverside General, was that? We're investigating, but it's possible Reed deliberately routed Wolf here knowing Pike could inflate the billing." Kowalski paused. "Or it's possible Reed didn't know the extent of the corruption. Either way, he took money, and that makes him complicit." Reynolds pulled out his phone. "I need to call him." "Don't!" Kowalski grabbed his arm. "Reed doesn't know we've found this yet. We need to keep it that way until we can bring him in." "When?" "Tomorrow morning. Federal agents will take him into custody at 0600. Reynolds looked sick. Kate understood why. Reed had been the one pushing her to testify, the one providing military witnesses, the one helping build the case, and the whole time he'd been part of what they were fighting against. "Does this change Friday?" Kate asked. "No. Your deposition still happens, but now we know the corruption goes deeper than state oversight. It reaches into military command." Kowalski looked at Kate. "Which makes your testimony even more important, and even more dangerous." Kate left the federal building at 2 a.m., feeling like the ground kept shifting under her feet. Every time she thought she understood the scope of this, it expanded. Reynolds drove her back to the hospital in silence. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "For what?" "For bringing you into this. For trusting Reed. For not seeing it sooner." Kate looked at him. "You served with him for 15 years. You trusted him. That's not your fault." "I should have known." "Nobody knows until they know." Kate's voice softened. "You taught me that. In Kandahar. When Morrison died. You told me I couldn't save everyone. That some people would die despite my best efforts. That I had to forgive myself for being human." Reynolds gripped the steering wheel. "This is different." "No, it's not. Reed made his choices. You made yours. You can't control what other people do, only what you do next." They reached the hospital. Kate got out. "What are you going to do next?" Reynolds asked. Kate looked up at the building. "Same thing I've been doing. My job. Until they physically dragged me away from it." She walked inside. The ER was quiet now. The overnight lull between late-night traumas and early morning emergencies. Kate found Vicky at the nurse's station, doing paperwork. "Thought you left hours ago," Vicky said. "Got pulled into something." "The investigation?" "Yeah." Vicky set down her pen. "Is it true? About Pike being murdered?" "Looks that way." "Jesus." Vicky rubbed her face. "How deep does this go?" "Deeper than anyone thought." Kate's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Cancel Friday. Walk away. Last chance." She showed Vicky. "Are you going to listen?" Vicky asked. Kate deleted the message. "What do you think?" "I think you're either the bravest person I've ever met or the most stubborn." "Can it be both?" Vicky almost smiled. "Yeah, it can be both." Kate went to her office, sat at her desk, pulled up the deposition prep documents one more time. 47 questions. She'd answered them all, reviewed them, refined them. She was ready. At 3 a.m., her office door opened. Halford stood there, looking worse than she'd ever seen him. "Can we talk?" Kate gestured to the chair. Halford sat. "I've been thinking about what you said, about doing something when you realize you're part of the problem." And I'm going to testify Friday. Not just about the charts I signed, about everything, every meeting with Pike, every conversation with Voss, every time I looked the other way. Halford's voice shook. "I'm going to lose my license, probably face charges. But you were right. I can't pretend anymore." Kate studied him. "Why now?" "Because I watched you these past few days. Watched you fight. Watched you refuse to back down even when they came at you with everything they had." Halford met her eyes. "I spent 14 years becoming the kind of doctor I swore I'd never be. Time to stop." He left. Kate sat alone in her office as dawn approached. Outside, Creston Falls was waking up. Shift changes, morning routines. The eternal rhythm of a city that kept moving no matter what. Her phone buzzed one more time. Reynolds. Reed's in custody, cooperating. Says he has information about who killed Pike. Kate called him. What information? Reed says Pike was killed by someone inside the network. Someone who knew Pike was about to flip. Someone with access to secure facilities and knowledge of how to bypass security systems. Who? Reynolds hesitated. Reed won't say until he has immunity. But Kate, he says this person is planning to target you next. Says they see you as the biggest threat. When? Friday. During your deposition. Reed says they're planning something to make sure you never testify. Kate's blood went cold. What kind of something? He won't say. But federal agents are taking the threat seriously. They're arranging security for Friday. Armed escort, secure location, the works. Kate looked out her window at the ER below, at the patients arriving, at the staff working. I'm still testifying. Kate, I don't care what they're planning. I don't care how dangerous it is. 3 people are dead. 15 million was stolen. Veterans were victimized. Her voice hardened. I'm testifying. Then we make sure you survive to do it. The call ended. Kate sat in her office and watched the sun rise over Creston Falls for the 4th morning in a row. 4 days since Wolf had arrived bleeding in her ER. 4 days since her entire life had exploded and rebuilt itself into something she barely recognized. 4 days until Friday. Until she walked into that deposition room and told the truth, no matter what it cost. Her door opened again. This time, Jimmy stood there with coffee and a worried expression. You've been here all night. Yeah, you need to sleep. I need to work. Jimmy set the coffee on her desk. Kate, everyone's talking about the threats, about Pike being murdered, about Friday. They're scared for you. They should be scared for themselves. This place almost killed them too. What do you mean? Kate pulled up the files on her computer. The violations. The deaths. The evidence that showed exactly how close Riverside General had come to complete collapse. Pike and Voss weren't just stealing money. They were dismantling patient safety piece by piece. Another 6 months and this hospital would have been killing people weekly. She looked at Jimmy. Everyone who works here was complicit. Some actively, most passively, but complicit. Jimmy's face went pale. What happens now? Now we rebuild. We fix what they broke. We make sure it never happens again. Kate stood. Starting with Friday, when I testify, and this whole thing finally ends. But even as she said it, Kate knew it wasn't ending Friday. It was just beginning. Because somewhere out there, someone was planning to make sure she never made it to that deposition room. Someone with resources, with access, with a willingness to kill. And Kate had no idea who they were. Friday morning arrived cold and clear. Kate stood in her apartment at 5 a.m., staring at the suit she'd bought Thursday afternoon. The first real suit she'd owned since leaving the Army. Dark gray, professional. The kind of armor people wore to courtrooms instead of battlefields. She dressed slowly. Clipped David Morrison's dog tags inside her collar where nobody could see them. Put on the jacket, checked her reflection. The woman looking back wasn't the quiet night nurse who'd walked into Riverside General 6 months ago. Wasn't the combat medic who'd left the Army 6 years ago either. She was something new, something forged in the space between those two versions. Her phone buzzed. Reynolds. Escort's outside. Ready when you are. Kate grabbed her files and walked out. 2 black SUVs waited at the curb. 4 federal agents in tactical gear. Reynolds stood beside the lead vehicle, looking like he hadn't slept. Morning, he said. Morning. They drove through empty Creston Falls streets toward the federal building downtown. Kate watched the city pass, the hospital where she worked, the VA clinic where she'd started therapy, the neighborhoods where people were just waking up to another ordinary day. Nothing about today was ordinary. Reed talked all night, Reynolds said from the front seat. Gave investigators everything. Names, accounts, meeting locations, the whole network. Did he say who killed Pike? Yeah. Reynolds turned to look at her. Dr. Sharon Whitmore. Kate's blood went cold. The State Inspector General? She wasn't really investigating Voss. She was part of the network, had been for 3 years. When Pike started cooperating, she killed him to protect herself and the others. But she was at Voss's house. She had him arrested. Theater. She knew federal investigators were closing in, needed to look like she was on the right side before anyone realized she wasn't. Reynolds' voice was grim. Reed says she's planning to testify today, says she's going to claim you fabricated evidence, that you manipulated him and Voss into false confessions, that the entire case is built on lies from a mentally unstable veteran. Kate felt her stomach drop. And people will believe her. She's the state inspector general. Was. FBI arrested her an hour ago. She's in custody now. Does she know? Not yet. They're waiting until after your deposition. Don't want her lawyers filing emergency motions to delay. They pulled up to the federal building. More agents waited outside. A perimeter had been established. Snipers on rooftops. K-9 units. The kind of security that made it clear someone took the threat seriously. Kowalski met them in the lobby. Ready? Kate nodded. They took the elevator to the 8th floor, walked down a corridor lined with more armed agents, entered a conference room that looked nothing like Kate had imagined. No jury box, no judge's bench, just a long table with chairs on both sides, recording equipment, a court reporter, and 3 lawyers who looked like they'd been bred in corporate law firms and fed on billable hours. Pike's legal team. The lead lawyer, a man named Westbrook with silver hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes, stood when Kate entered. Dr. Brennan, thank you for coming. Kate sat down, said nothing. Kowalski sat beside her. Reynolds took a position against the wall with the other agents. The deposition began. For the first hour, Westbrook asked basic questions. Background, education, military service. Kate answered each one carefully, aware that every word was being recorded. Then Westbrook shifted. Dr. Brennan, you've been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder, correct? Yes. And you've sought treatment for this condition? Yes. How many deployments did you serve? 2. And during these deployments, how many casualties did you witness? Kate's jaw tightened. I didn't count. Estimate. Hundreds. Including soldiers who died despite your medical intervention? Yes. Westbrook made a note. Would you say these experiences affected your judgment, your perception of events? Kowalski cut in. Objection. Dr. Brennan's mental health is irrelevant to, it's relevant to her credibility, Westbrook countered. If she's suffering from trauma-induced paranoia, it affects the reliability of her testimony. Kate leaned forward. I documented everything, every violation, every safety concern, every instance of fraud. You can question my mental health all you want, but you can't question my documentation. Documentation you created while allegedly suffering from PTSD. Documentation that was verified by federal investigators. That matches financial records. That correlates with patient deaths. Kate's voice was steel. I'm not paranoid. I'm thorough. Westbrook smiled. Let's talk about Gordon Pike. You filed multiple complaints against him over 6 months, correct? I filed incident reports documenting safety violations, which resulted in his termination and arrest, which resulted in a federal investigation that uncovered massive fraud, or which resulted from a vendetta against a supervisor who challenged your authority. Kate's hands curled into fists under the table. Pike didn't challenge my authority. He endangered patients. There's a difference. Is there? From where I'm sitting, you systematically destroyed a man's career because he dared to discipline you. And when he ended up dead in custody, I had nothing to do with Pike's death. But you benefited from it. You got his job, got recognition, got revenge. Kate stood. The room went silent. Gordon Pike died because someone in his network killed him to keep him quiet. Not because of me. Not because of some imagined vendetta. Her voice cut through the room. And if you want to talk about who benefited, let's talk about the $15 million his network stole. Let's talk about the 3 veterans who died because he cut costs to maximize profits. Let's talk about the systematic corruption that you're being paid to defend. Westbrook's smile vanished. Sit down, Dr. Brennan. No. Kate pulled out a file, set it on the table. This is a list of every patient who died at Riverside General under Pike's administration. 47 people over 2 years, 12 of them veterans. Every single death preventable with proper staffing and equipment. She opened the file. Photos spilled across the table. Faces, names, service records. This is Sergeant James Kowalski. Died from sepsis that should have been caught if Pike hadn't cut lab staffing. This is Private Lisa Martinez. Died from a medication error that happened because Pike used expired drugs to save money. This is Captain David Riordan. Died from surgical complications because Pike delayed his transfer to save on ambulance costs. Kate looked at Westbrook. You want to talk about who benefited from Pike's corruption? Talk to their families. Tell them their loved ones died so Pike could steal money. Tell them I'm the problem. The room was dead silent. Westbrook recovered quickly. Your theatrics don't change the facts. You're an unstable veteran with an axe to grind. Your testimony is worthless. The door opened. Teresa and Robert Morrison walked in. Behind them, 12 soldiers in dress uniforms. Behind them, Agent Kowalski with a tablet. Teresa stepped forward. My son David wrote me letters about Dr. Brennan, about how she saved lives, about how she stayed with wounded soldiers when everyone else gave up. She's not unstable. She's the most stable person I've ever heard of. One of the soldiers, Staff Sergeant Martinez from Wolf's team, spoke next. I served with Sergeant Brennan in Helmand Province, watched her treat casualties under enemy fire for 6 hours straight. She's not paranoid. She's competent. More competent than most doctors I've worked with. Another soldier. She saved my life in Kandahar, pulled me out of a burning vehicle and kept me alive until medevac arrived. If she says Pike was corrupt, I believe her. One by one, the soldiers testified. Not under oath, not officially, but with the weight of personal experience that no lawyer could dismiss. Westbrook tried to object. Kowalski cut him off. These are character witnesses, and we have 12 more ready to testify in federal court. So you can keep attacking Dr. Brennan's credibility, or you can accept that she's telling the truth. Westbrook looked at his fellow lawyers. Some silent communication passed between them. We need a recess. Denied, Kowalski said. Dr. Brennan has answered your questions. Now I have some for you. She pulled up the tablet, showed the network diagram, the payments, the connections. Your client wasn't working alone. He was part of a network that stole $15 million and killed multiple people. And you're defending him because you were paid by the same network to obstruct this investigation. Westbrook's face went white. That's a baseless accusation. Is it? Because I have financial records showing your law firm received $300,000 from a shell company connected to Dr. Raymond Voss, paid 2 weeks before you agreed to represent Pike. Kowalski smiled. So let's talk about who has credibility problems. The door opened again. FBI agents entered. Daniel Westbrook, you're under arrest for obstruction of justice and conspiracy to commit fraud. They took him out in handcuffs. His fellow lawyers sat frozen. Kowalski looked at Kate. I think we're done here. Kate walked out of the federal building at noon, surrounded by soldiers who'd flown across the country to defend her. Teresa Morrison hugged her in the lobby. Robert Morrison shook her hand and told her David would be proud. Reynolds waited by the SUV. Whitmore's been charged. Reed's cooperating. The network's collapsing. He paused. It's over. Kate looked up at the federal building. Not yet. She drove back to Riverside General alone. The vandalized paint on her car had been cleaned off by someone. She didn't know who. The parking lot was full. Shift change. People coming and going. Kate walked into the ER. Staff stopped what they were doing. Stared. She kept walking. Found Vicky at the nurse's station. How'd it go? Vicky asked. Pike's lawyers are under arrest. The network's done. Federal prosecutors have everything they need. Vicky exhaled. So it's really over. The investigation is. The work isn't. Kate climbed to her office, sat at her desk, pulled up the files she'd been working on for a week, staffing proposals, equipment upgrades, protocol revisions, all the things that would rebuild Riverside General into something that actually cared about patients. She worked through the afternoon, through the evening, through the night. At 2 a.m., Jimmy found her still at her desk. You're going to burn out, he said. Probably. Take a break. Go home, sleep. Kate looked at him. I spent 6 years running from who I was, hiding, pretending, trying to be invisible. She gestured at the files. I'm done hiding. This is who I am, someone who fixes broken things, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. Jimmy smiled. Yeah, I know. He left. Kate returned to work. Saturday morning brought news coverage. Every channel running the story. Federal takedown of healthcare fraud network. Multiple arrests, millions recovered, veterans vindicated. Kate's face was on every screen. Her military service, her documentation, her testimony. She ignored it all. Sunday, the hospital board called an emergency meeting. Kate attended in scrubs because she'd been working a trauma case and hadn't had time to change. The board chairman, a man named Whitfield who looked like he'd never missed a meal, cleared his throat. Director Brennan, in light of recent events, the board wants to commend you for your service. You've exposed corruption, saved lives, and restored integrity to this institution. Kate said nothing. We're prepared to offer you a permanent position as Director of Emergency Services. Full authority, substantial raise. Whatever resources you need to rebuild the department. I accept on 3 conditions, Kate said. Whitfield blinked. Conditions? 1. I hire and fire without board approval. 2. No administrative interference in medical decisions, ever. 3. Every veteran patient gets priority treatment and full advocacy support, non-negotiable. The board members looked at each other. Those are significant demands, Whitfield said. Those are basic requirements. You can accept them or find another director. Your choice. Silence. Then Whitfield smiled. Accepted. All 3. Kate stood. Then we start tomorrow. She left them sitting there and returned to work. Monday morning, Kate assembled the entire ER staff, day shift, night shift, doctors, nurses, techs, everyone. They crowded into the largest conference room, looking nervous. Kate stood at the front. 6 months ago, I started working here as a floor nurse. Nobody knew who I was. Nobody cared. I was invisible, easy to dismiss, easy to ignore. She paused. But I saw things. Violations, shortcuts, patterns that killed people, and I documented every single one. The room was silent. Some of you helped Pike. Some of you looked the other way. Some of you were just trying to survive in a broken system. Kate's voice softened. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to rebuild. To create an ER that actually protects patients instead of profits. She pulled up a presentation. New protocols. New staffing ratios. New equipment. New standards. This is what we're building, starting today. Anyone who wants to be part of it, you're welcome. Anyone who wants to fight it, there's the door. Nobody moved. Good. Let's get to work. Over the next month, Riverside General transformed. New hires, new equipment, new culture. Veterans got dedicated advocates. Staff got proper support. Patients got care that didn't cut corners. Kate worked 18-hour days, slept in her office, lived on bad coffee and momentum. But slowly, the ER started to function like it should. On a cold December morning, Kate got a call from Colonel Reynolds. Major Wolf's being discharged from rehab today. Wants to see you. Kate met them at the military medical center across town. Wolf stood in the lobby in dress uniform, looking human again, healthy, strong. Brennan, he smiled. Heard you've been busy. Little bit. Heard you took down an entire corruption network, got 6 people arrested, rebuilt a hospital from scratch. He paused. Just another Tuesday for you? Kate almost smiled. Something like that. Wolf handed her an envelope. This is from the Army, official commendation for your service, both during deployment and with this investigation. Kate opened it. A certificate. A medal. Words she couldn't quite process. You don't have to accept it, Wolf said quietly. I know you left that life behind, but I wanted you to know we haven't forgotten. That what you did matters. That who you are matters. Kate stared at the medal. Bronze Star, second one, for actions above and beyond. I spent 6 years trying to forget who I was, she said. Turns out I can't. Turns out I don't want to. She pinned the medal inside her jacket, next to Morrison's dog tags. Wolf saluted. Kate returned it. Then he pulled her into a hug. Thank you for everything. Same to you. That night, Kate sat in her apartment, the same small space she'd been living in for 6 months, but somehow felt different now. She pulled out her laptop and started writing. Not reports, not protocols. A letter. To every veteran who'd been victimized by Pike's network. To every family who'd lost someone. To every person who'd been failed by a system that should have protected them. She told them what had happened, what had been found, what was being done to make sure it never happened again, and she told them they mattered, that their service mattered, that they deserved better. She sent the letter at midnight. By morning, responses flooded her inbox. Hundreds of them, veterans thanking her, families finding closure, people finding hope. Kate read every single one. 6 months later, Riverside General's ER had the highest patient satisfaction scores in the state, lowest mortality rates, best veteran care. Kate had built something that actually worked. She stood in her office one evening, reviewing quarterly reports, when Vicky knocked. "Got a minute?" Kate gestured to the chair. "I'm putting in my notice," Vicky said. Kate looked up. "Why?" "Because I've been a nurse for 23 years, and I finally remembered what I'm supposed to be doing." Vicky smiled. "I'm going back to school, getting my nurse practitioner license, going to work in veteran care, help people who've been failed by the system." "That's good." "It's because of you, because you showed me what it looks like to actually give a damn." Vicky stood. "Thank you for not giving up on me, for giving me a second chance." She left. Kate returned to work, but later that night, driving home through Creston Falls, she pulled over near the hospital, looked up at the building, at the ER entrance where she'd walked in 6 months ago invisible and walked out visible in ways she never wanted. Her phone rang. Teresa Morrison. "Kate, I hope it's not too late to call." "Never too late. Robert and I wanted you to know we're establishing a foundation, in David's name, to support combat medics transitioning to civilian healthcare. We want to help people like you find their way." Kate's throat closed. That's incredible. "We want you on the board, if you're willing." "I'd be honored." After the call ended, Kate sat in her car and cried. Not from sadness, from something else. Something that felt like pieces finally fitting together. She'd spent 6 years running from her past, trying to be someone she wasn't, hiding her competence because showing it made her vulnerable. But vulnerability wasn't weakness, it was just being human. And being human, flawed, scarred, still fighting, was enough. Kate started her car and drove home through streets that didn't feel foreign anymore. Creston Falls had become hers. Riverside General had become hers. This life she'd built from the wreckage of everything she'd tried to leave behind had become hers. She'd stopped running, and what she'd found in standing still was worth more than any escape. 3 years later, Kate stood in front of a room full of veterans transitioning to civilian healthcare. The Morrison Foundation had grown into a national organization. She'd been invited to speak at their annual conference. "I spent 6 years trying to forget I was a soldier," she told them. "Trying to be a civilian nurse who didn't remember what it felt like to treat casualties under fire, who didn't wake up hearing gunfire, who didn't carry the weight of everyone I couldn't save." She paused, looked at their faces, saw her own history reflected back. "But you can't forget who you were. You can only decide what you do with it. I tried hiding, tried being invisible, tried pretending my past didn't matter." She smiled. "Turns out it's the only thing that did matter. Because that past, those deployments, those casualties, those impossible choices, that's what taught me to fight for people when everyone else gave up." She pulled out Morrison's dog tags, held them up. "This belonged to a soldier I couldn't save. I carried them for 6 years like a weight, like proof I'd failed." She put them back inside her shirt. "Now I carry them as a reminder that even when you lose, you keep fighting, that even when you're scared, you keep showing up, that even when the system is broken, you keep trying to fix it." The room was silent. You're not civilians pretending to be soldiers anymore. You're not soldiers pretending to be civilians. You're both. And that's your strength. Use it, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She stepped down. The room erupted in applause. Later, standing outside the conference center, Reynolds found her. "Good speech." "Thanks." "Meant what you said? About using the past?" Kate looked at him. "Every word." Reynolds smiled. "Good. Because I'm retiring next year. Army's looking for someone to run their combat medic training program. Someone with field experience and administrative skills, someone who knows how to build things from nothing." Kate raised an eyebrow. "You recommending me?" "Already did." "They're interested. Very interested." Kate thought about it. About Riverside General, now thriving under new leadership. About Creston Falls, which had become home, about the life she'd built, about the chance to train the next generation of medics, to teach them not just how to save lives, but how to survive saving them. Tell them I'll think about it. Fair enough. That night, Kate drove back to Creston Falls, stopped at the VA clinic where she still did volunteer counseling every Thursday, stopped at the hospital where her office light was still on, her replacement working late, just like she had, stopped at the cemetery where 3 veterans were buried, the ones who died under Pike's administration, the ones whose deaths had started everything. She laid flowers on each grave. I didn't forget, she said quietly. I never forget. Then she drove home, to the house she'd bought last year, to the life she'd stopped running from, to the person she'd finally become. Kate Brennan had learned something in those 6 years of hiding, and in the 3 years since she'd stopped. You couldn't save everyone. Some people died despite your best efforts. Some systems were too broken to fix from inside. Some fights were too big to win alone. But you fought anyway. Not because you'd win, not because it was easy, not because anyone would thank you, but because some things were worth fighting for. Even when it cost you everything, especially when it cost you everything. She'd been dismissed as just a nurse, just a veteran, just another person trying to survive. And she'd proven that just was the most dangerous word in the language, because there was no just about standing up when everyone else sat down, no just about speaking truth when silence was safer, no just about fighting corruption when compliance was easier. There was only the choice, made every day, in every moment, to see something broken and fix it, to see someone bleeding and stop it, to see injustice and refuse to look away. That was what separated the people who changed things from the people who watched things change. And Kate Brennan had spent too long watching. She was done watching. She was done hiding. She was done being invisible. She was exactly who she'd always been, a combat medic who couldn't walk away from people who needed help. And that, it turned out, was more than enough. It was everything.